Tricks?
I'm doing great.
Very good.
Eric. Yeah. Why you take on?
Stop giving me that look, City.
And this look that I'm giving you is what exactly?
City's fault.
It's my fault, huh?
Yes.
Okay. I agree. I accept.
It is because of you.
I own it now. Explain this fault to me in detail.
You're faulty. That's enough.
You're likening me to an electric gadget. Eh?
Oh, yes.
Faulty.
Welcome to the Situation Room on this 13th day of February 2020. Of course, this show takes a look at newspapers for the first hour, and then we have various topics that we discuss throughout the show, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. So let's start with what happened between 10 a.m. yesterday and 6 a.m. this morning. The big news, of course, is one and the same on all the newspapers. What do you have, Tricks?
Well, on the Standard, we have the last salute, and pictured there is a very composed picture of the remains of the late President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi. The date of his life, he was born in 1925 and died in 2020, has been put on splashed on the front page. And this is the same thing that is on the Daily Nation. Go well, Mzee Moi. And another beautifully composed picture right there of the place where he lay to rest next to his wife, Mama Lea Moi. So it's pretty much the same thing all across board.
It's a very beautiful, very beautiful. When you look at this, yes, this very beautiful salute, the final salute, the last salute of the former President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi.
Right.
Military has outdone itself here, right?
Right.
Paid their respects to their former commander-in-chief of the armed forces. This was a beautiful ceremony happening in Kabarak. Of course, this happened in Kabarak, and just like you've said, he was laid to rest next to his wife, the late Lena Moi.
And speaking of beauty, the emotions, I think also a part of that. The 91 gun salute and the fly past. And even just the colors and the pictures that have been, we've been treated to from the past few days since Tuesday when he passed. Right?
91.
19.
19.
Why you?
I
What?
think I have dyslexia, so when I see 19,
Oh,
sometimes
you forget I see,
19 gun salute. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that would have taken a while.
I'm wondering, wow, are they still doing this? Is this still going on?
Yeah, so it's a 19 gun salute, but I think the military honors that we were told he would be accorded while he's being sent off. That was part of it, and of course, just giving importance to the whole, what he did to what he means to Kenya, and so it was just embodying it, and I think it encapsulates the beauty that you're talking about, Eric.
Yeah. Very, very beautiful. And then, of course, they played it's called a bagel. Is it called a bagel, City?
Bugle.
It's a bugle.
Right.
It's a bugle.
Yes.
And what does it signify?
Well, I think it was a tune that was played a lot of times. If you look at history significantly, it was played at the births and of what would be the heirs or the firstborns of quite significant people. And then also at the death or, burial ceremony. You also have the bugle and certain tunes being played at the induction or inauguration of certain leaders. And this is historic. It's a it's a well-timed tradition. So that happened as well. I don't know I can't remember the particular song that was played yesterday, but
the last post.
Yes, there, that's it. And it's also used by quite a number of armies the world over. So
it's a thing.
It's a thing. It's an army thing.
It's a thing.
It's the thing. And
No. It goes actually beyond the thing. Any instrument that is used by the armed forces has to have a very, very specific purpose. If you wanted to rally people, for instance, you don't use a trumpet. You may use drums, but a bugle did the trick. It was like a wake-up call for many people. It was the one. It's a small instrument,
but it has a distinct sound.
Yeah.
It is not just distinct; it's unique. You cannot mistake it for any other.
You'll hear it from wherever.
Yes,
from
you
however
cannot.
far you are, you're just definitely gonna hear that sound.
Yes, you will.
And it's a solemn sound as well when you think about it.
There it goes.
And you can calls you to
It's
to
pretty,
attention, right?
yeah.
Yes, it does.
The
Absolutely.
last
It tugs
call.
on your strings, your heartstrings, I think.
Yep.
Reminds me of the bagpipes in some countries, right?
It does, but you see, for instance, most anything that is military, whether it is a Boy Scouts, anything that is regimented, has set procedures. Now, the bugle would more or less introduce end of a session,
Beginning of
another session.
Right.
Yes. So it had a very specific purpose in military terms. Yes.
Of course, we also know that something had happened early in the morning on the way to the funeral.
Right.
Cabinet Secretary without portfolio and Secretary General of Jubilee, Raphael Tuju, was involved in an accident, taken to hospital.
Interestingly enough, I
Matatu
think, right.
also taken to hospital.
Yeah, passengers taken to hospital. Of course, his 14. The driver of the Matatu in critical condition,
Right.
but also looking at the fact that everybody else in the Matatu was injured. And just giving the details of that is that the Matatu was trying to overtake and unfortunately then collided with Raphael Tuju's vehicle. Interestingly enough, we had seen that he was to be airlifted from Kijabe to Nairobi, but apparently he had to have emergency surgery that took place in Kijabe before he was then now airlifted to Nairobi. Supposedly right now is of course admitted here in the city and is said to be in stable condition.
Yeah.
And we had CS Amina and of course Governor of Machakos Alfred Mutua, who then left the ceremony at Kabarak and went to then be with him. And it was good because then we also saw CS Amina making sure that the other individuals who were injured during that accident then were medical help was sought for them. So she was quite instrumental in that yesterday. Interesting to see. Going back though to the the final, goodbye to Moi yesterday. So many things happened even while this final goodbye was being said, and I think there were so many nuances, so many messages that came out during this, even from Gideon Moi's speech at the end of it, the handover of the famous Fimbo to him from his older brother. Quite significant there in terms of the message that was being passed when that piece was being given to him. Basically saying, well, this is you now. Yeah. It's over to you. Rule us, essentially. Right. So there are quite a number of messages. And looking at the different things that different people had to say during this service, there were very many messages. Deep or on the surface, but there was quite a lot of messaging that was made yesterday.
I didn't quite get what some politicians were saying, though. I was just looking at it and wondering, all right, so what are you saying?
Well, it was clear that some people were positioning themselves in terms of what they were saying, and that was quite obvious.
Do you actually expect politicians to miss such an opportunity?
I mean, it was a glaring opportunity for them.
Did you see the crowd?
Thank God.
And it's a funeral.
Thank God not many of them were given an opportunity to speak.
Because it would have been a circus.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at it and wondering, okay, so what are you saying? Tunataka university hapa. Oh, okay, yeah. Is this the forum? Really, you've chosen this platform?
Well, of course. I mean, and then you heard, individuals like the Wiper leader, Kalonzo Musyoka, who went on a long spiel about the work that he had done for regional integration and how he was sure that the president's appointment...
Was it his funeral?
I mean... And then we went on about international relations and international politics and how he's going into the future to make sure that,
that gentleman has a knack for missing it. Huh?
Honestly, he missed it by a mile in this case. If anything, we read his CV during this his remarks.
That was neither the
He
time,
was paying tribute. If you think about it on the other side, he was paying tribute to the man who gave him the opportunity to do all these things.
No.
That's what he was saying.
Sorry, no.
Try again,
in the beginning, perhaps.
All right.
And for the last 30 seconds at the end.
What is Kalonzo Musyoka's journey in politics?
Try again.
But for the 12 minutes, for the 12 minutes and 47 seconds,
yes,
I timed. For the 12 minutes and 45 seconds that he spoke after the 40-second introduction and the 39-second exit, when he then talked about given the opportunity to do one or the other, he spoke about his appointment by Uhuru Kenyatta, then to go forth and talk with the leaders of Rwanda and South Sudan and Somalia and Eritrea, and how he saw that this was the only Kalonzo Musyoka, how he saw, because of the fact that he had been appointed in Moi's government to do the same in terms of South Sudan, Sudan peace talks, he was then again properly positioned to do this moving forward, and how he thought it was the only way. And he talked about building a Dubai in Kenya. He had a vision, and he could see that because he had been appointed by President Uhuru Kenyatta,
and he
this is what
Listen,
he
let
would
me
be
play
able to
devil's
do.
advocate.
Come on.
You know, sometimes
12 minutes,
you try.
47 seconds.
You know, sometimes you're trying to say something, but it comes out the wrong way. Perhaps what he was going for was that the late president was the inspiration behind his efforts towards.
He should have said that.
Then he
You
should,
are
yeah.
really kind.
Maybe that was the where the
Yes.
thought originated. But then when it came
Yes,
out,
yes.
his
Yes,
ego.
yes,
For
yes,
12
yes.
minutes
And
took
on that
over.
particular occasion, of course, pigs also flew in there.
What caught my attention, though, is he spoke about the locusts and how they're eating watermelons.
Of course.
Isn't it?
Were you laughing?
No.
Yeah.
Coming from
There are locusts
it is the source
in Kitui.
of that particular information
And you know-
that is bringing about mirth.
Kitui,
all right?
there are watermelons that grow in Kitui. So
course
you
they
can
are.
imagine the devastation, of course, is also impacting on watermelons,
Of course it is.
among others.
Yes. And he, former vice president,
Yeah,
he
he said
Has a
this is the
plan.
opportunity.
ambassador,
Par
plenipotentiary, etc., etc., etc. What has he done to allay and to sort of like remedy this situation?
He was calling on the government
Yeah.
to take this opportunity. This is what I'm saying.
Mr. President,
This is
I
a
see that you,
funeral of
he
the
actually said,
departed
Mr.
president.
President, I see that you're foreseeing, your foresight by my appointment
Hey.
will make certain things happen. The man said it not less than 4 times throughout. And at some point I was like, okay, clearly
Enough
he has
already.
an audience
Yeah.
and he knew exactly what he was doing. He mentioned
he did, but he missed the point.
He missed the point.
Yeah.
By a mile.
You know, that was a solemn occasion, all
Yes.
right? You talk about the person who has brought you there, all right? Now, if there was mirth, Gideon Moi was actually humorous.
Yes,
There are
he
many
was.
people who...
Nick Salat did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, in how he was, you know,
He presented the...
he presented it spectacularly.
Yes.
And he throughout everything that he said and every opportunity when he came to introduce the next speaker, because then he was given the floor to basically bring everybody else on board. And when he did this, then he was then able to everything he threaded in Moi
Yes.
beautifully.
Right.
Throughout.
He didn't miss the script in this case.
So while we're talking about President Moi's legacy in terms of diplomacy, then I think Sally Koskei, the former head of civil service, then did a great job in
she did.
representing what
Fantastic.
he
Fantastic,
did
yeah.
on that level. She wasn't talking about herself, but just what she experienced and how he worked his way around certain diplomatic difficulties and problems, and successfully so. So I think...
And then the brother Kalonzo would come and say, you know, there are times when we would argue and not agree with Sally. And Mzee would call us and ask us, what is happening? And then I would.
Of course.
ego.
Pause. Beyond ego, we must understand also that this is one forum where some of these folks have that they will probably not have again in the near future, and they were
Yeah.
using it.
Yes, and who
properly.
do you think is going to remember all those things that we were saying, except if you want to perhaps cause a little mirth? Who else is going to remember? The things that people will remember are the things that people said about Moi. Who it is who eulogized Moi the best. Who
Yes.
it is, the uniqueness with which they brought. Why are we talking about Nick Salat? It's because of the way he managed that entire proceeding. All right?
They usually say read the room, so perhaps he failed in reading the room.
Plus, I
and
think
what-
his message was he knew beforehand what it is that was important at that point, and it was going to carry the day, and he didn't divert or sway.
Consider what other leaders said. Did they focus on themselves? No.
No.
Yeah. There are some who are just talking about other things.
No,
We'll
they-
talk about them shortly.
Oh, no.
I'll ask you, for example, to tell me what the governor of Baringo said. What MP William Kapket said. University, yes. Anyway, it's 16 minutes past 6 o'clock. This is a situation. It's a convergent broadcast with KTN News Morning Express. We have Trick Singaro in the studio. My name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga and Nduoko. Let's take a look at weather, and then we come back and continue looking at the headlines and the coverage of yesterday's funeral service of the burial of former President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. 16 after 6. Good morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru. The weather with Spice FM.
Taking a look at what conditions will look like around the country and the world today is 17 degrees in Nairobi. Today we see mostly cloudy conditions with a high of 25 and a low of 16. Taking a look at Nakuru, it's light rain showers through the whole day, 15 degrees right now with highs of 27 and lows of 15. In Mombasa, mostly cloudy conditions today with highs of 27. We're going to see some rain later on and see highs of 32, I beg your pardon. In Malindi, we see partly cloudy conditions which will turn into rain later, 32 degrees the high. In Eldoret, right now at 14 degrees, clear skies with periodic clouds and rain expected there later as well. Rain expected in Kisumu later with highs of 29, currently standing at 20 degrees with partly cloudy conditions. Taking a look in the East African region, in Kampala, 19 degrees, partly cloudy conditions through the day with a high of 31. In Dar es Salaam, it's light thunderstorms and rain through the day with highs of 31 and lows of 25. Further south, in Johannesburg, we are currently at 19 degrees and see partly conditions through the day. In Lagos at 25 degrees, again a hazy morning but sunny conditions later with highs of 36 and lows of 22. Looking further to Europe, in London we see rain this morning at 8 degrees with highs of 10 and lows of 2. In New York we see rain as well, some sleet and snow, currently at 6 degrees with highs of 7 and lows of 4. And finally, rounding it out in Paris, a clear morning at 6 degrees, rain expected later with highs of 12 and lows of 6.
Chilled Spice.
You are watching Morning Express and listening to Spice FM, or both. And I am Trixie Ngado, joining the folks at Spice FM, CT Muga, Ndu Oko, and Eric Latif. And this is Press Review. We're taking a look at what's making headlines, and the biggest story is celebrating a statement. That's the late former president Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. Lots of tributes were given yesterday. Hits, misses, as we have analyzed a few minutes ago. And there's also the tribute from Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula, who, according to the papers, praise Nyayo. Now, we are told here that President Moi introduced Nyayo wards in most public hospitals across the country, and that was just one of the many things that has been lauded that the former president did. Do you think it was a hit or a miss?
What Musali said?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they paid homage to the man of the day, right? And I think that was what was important. Focus your speech and your attention on this man. We are talking about the former president. You are here to eulogize the former president.
Right.
Now, the person I was talking about, William Kamket, the MP for Tiati. So he came here, he talked about, he gave his own experience with Mzee and said there are times when Mzee would call me and tell me, and Ambia Rafiki yako Gideon, that I expect him to work with President Uhuru Kenyatta. I expect him to work with Uhuru Kenyatta. That is okay, because he's giving his experience with Mzee Moi. Then he goes ahead and says, we need a university here.
Of course he does.
And President Uhuru, please convert, I don't know what, and call it Moi University.
Excellent.
Now, what now?
But don't you think that's really typical of Kenyan culture at funerals? That is almost
change.
Always what we do with funerals. Especially when there's a politician
We do. It's politicians who have actually ingrained this culture in our minds, but it must stop. It's disrespectful, at the very least. You've come for someone's funeral. You've been given an opportunity to eulogize the person, maybe greet the audience and say something, but to make it now your occasion where your issues take center stage. No, it's completely disrespectful.
It's disrespectful, and it should actually begin to be discouraged. We laugh about it, but if you want to give it some depth of thought, it is not the way in which it should be. Because at the end of the day, all of it is paying last respect to this individual, right? And I think, and then you have a family there who is mourning the loss of their beloved. Right?
This is actually
this is what takes center stage. It should not be.
Why do you think there at some funerals people actually say politicians are not allowed to speak? It's
they refuse.
You simply do not speak. Attend. At best, you'll be said, say hello. If you
stand up and wave.
If you decide to say hello, someone has been given instructions, switch off the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and
The
someone
time is almost sacred. And as while the whole nation was mourning, for some of them it's really personal and they actually need comfort. So the humor that some people brought out, the positive
Very
stories,
good.
is
Those are
what
good.
is needed. But then when you come to a point where people are just veering off and trying to, put themselves out there as, whatever they think
We
is
need a university. Yeah. Same thing was said by the governor, Stanley Kiptis. I think that was not the opportunity to talk about university. That's not it.
if
You
you're
can
if
have
you're
a
the
moment
governor,
with the
who are you
president on the side.
asking? I mean, you are the governor. Who
What are you
can-
telling?
yeah,
Yeah,
can
exactly.
You're
work.
coming to tell that you're going
and
to
you're,
do
and
your
you're
job.
the governor?
I mean, no.
Do you not have access? If you want to discuss this with the national government, you can get very
You
many
are
opportunities.
the governor. Are you telling me that this governor cannot go and talk to whoever it is in the Ministry of Education, the people concerned, and say, we have this institution, this is what we'd like?
Yeah.
How do they think other counties have managed to get university colleges, for instance, in their counties? They have a conversation, the people in charge. But what this points to me is this culture that developed over time where people expect, anticipate, in fact, they think it is their right to not work for something, but to be given. Essentially, we are hearing we want,
Yes.
and you are being asked.
Now
why?
that you're here,
Yes.
to achieve kitu.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
basically what it is.
Basically.
That's actually, now tell me, this is a funeral for heaven's sake. This is a man whose efforts have made it possible for the very position that you have as governor to exist. If you look at his contributions towards championing a new constitution and his understanding. Remember, the devolution is the dream come true for Kadu.
Yep. Yep.
They from at independence had wanted this devolved situation to be
Yes.
the norm in Kenya. So now, this person whom you've come to marry made it possible for you to have this job. Because otherwise, you'd either be struggling to be an MCA or a councillor, as it was called then, or an MP. And that would have been the end of that particular story.
Yeah.
You cannot see what this person's effort made possible for you and many other people in this country. You have to focus on this narrow thing that can be discussed in a completely different forum.
Different
Yes.
forum. Absolutely.
I don't think after that the president is going to take note and say,
Of
'cause
course
this,
not.
yeah. So to what end is
Kumbuka
it?
kwa mazishi ya mzee
Yeah,
ulisema
ule
unataka
alisema,
nini.
In fact, the day you go to ask that thing, you'll be told
Yeah.
Nini
you are that disrespectful person who,
Yeah.
when we were burying the old man, you had
You are
That is what you'll be
bringing
remembered
this
for.
up.
go back and come after 2 months.
Yeah.
However, we also saw some of the other national leaders. Raila Odinga
Yes.
did very, very well as well,
Right.
right? So first of all, he starts with the history of him and Mzee and the kind of interactions that they had. Tulikosana, we made peace. And he eulogized him, just like we said.
Yeah, the dirge
The
now
dirge came
We
out
expected it and
properly.
it happened. Yeah.
It came out properly, right? Just the same way his father did with Mzee Jomo Kenyatta.
Tell us what Joey means. City.
And say it the way it should be said.
Okay. Now, Joey is a rhino.
Okay.
Okay? That's what it is. So, one of the things that the delightful and wonderful people of my community do, if they want to sort of like praise you, they will, should we say, nickname you and use an animal of prominence.
Right.
For instance, one of the things that young men refer to each other as is Ondiek. Ondiek is a wolf, okay, or a hyena. Okay, when somebody calls,
Fisi.
so they don't Fisi when you put it in Kiswahili.
It's
terrible.
It's lost its
takes on a
yeah.
different meaning.
Now you know you've gone completely left, right? But you know someone calling someone Ondiek. They will even call you Ruath, meaning a bull. Okay, all right. If they call you Liech, okay, it probably means your stature is huge, or you yourself in your body, you have, should you say, excessive bodily mass, okay?
Stealth.
So Joey now, it combines, if you look at the qualities of rhino, what does it combine? Strength, yes. It is an animal that power, charging, okay, hardy, difficult to kill. Now, that's why he embodied, because he could have chosen other animals, but Joey specifically tells you this is not some animal you want to joke around with.
Right?
Yes, and anybody who knows the history of a rhino will tell you that a rhino is not an animal you actually want to upset.
Interestingly enough, acts in solitary quite a lot,
Yes.
but is respected by the other animals as well.
Yes.
So that was the Dajwas.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful one by Raila.
It was a beautiful
one by Raila. I
One
think
of those moments
And
that give you
immediately
goosebumps.
he finished, he left the stage.
Yes.
I think that was quite interesting as well. And I
As-
didn't
as
time
opposed
his,
to-
as opposed to others who stayed and continued talking about
you news. Yeah, and he did talk about dynasties and the thought of having
Yes.
dynasties not being the right way to approach politics. And he did speak of how Moi rose from nothing to what he was and his father. And he just said there's no entitlement when it comes to politics, alluding to the fact that there's no need for service rather than just feeling like you need, to rise to the thought that people just rise owing to their families and where their history has gotten them. So I think that was
could
a
we say
beautiful
he was
way.
throwing a political jab into this as well?
A subtle one, I think.
That was it, right? Because this, when you talk about dynasties, it's politics of 2022. The hustler nation versus the dynasties and all. And here he was saying, all right, so you guys, and it's not the first time Raila is saying he's talking about the dynasty story. He chose an opportune moment to say, the man who's lying here today, came from nothing. Then, of
Right.
course, you can look at his sons. Two of his sons are in parliament. One of his late sons was also, a politician.
Yeah.
It's not about who you are today. It's about what you make of yourself.
Yeah.
Coming up above and beyond your circumstance. Actually, that's quite important as well. Of course, it cannot be ignored. Of course, it was in jest and in humor, but if you look at the messages underneath of what was prescribed by Dr. Harry, Gideon Moi at some point, when he talked about what certain leaders need, after talking about the fact that, he had been now privy to so many medical terms that he could then prescribe.
Interesting.
And of course, there were certain things that he's prescribed for certain people, 5 mg or ml of something for the president, prayers for Ruto, and staying away from it all for the speaker. So, I mean, it was interesting.
And lots of love.
And
for
lots
Mama
of
Rachel.
love for Mama Rachel. She
Yeah.
needed that, right? Yeah, that was interesting as well.
Dr. Harry.
Dr. Harry.
But yesterday he actually realized that,
He realized that. I think he realized that the nation was talking about
Yeah.
Dr. Harry and decided to
Yeah.
decided to rectify that.
Kenyans are very quick. Have you seen the t-shirts already out?
Yeah.
Dr. Harry.
And the memes.
I wouldn't
And
be
the
surprised
media
if somebody was called Joey today if they were born.
Joey.
Yes. Oh yeah, if somebody was born today, that's what you've told us, City, right?
Yes.
Depending on the occasion. So it's possible that a child will be born and called Joey.
There are people who actually called Joe. It's a name
Yeah.
that they have. It's even a family name. Yes.
Let's take a look at traffic and then the conversation continues. This is the Situation Room on Spice FM, broadcasting in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, as well as live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke and Facebook, Spice FM KE. And also, it's on KTN News this morning, Morning Express. That's why we have Trix Ngado with us. Let's take a short break, take a look at traffic, and then we continue the conversation. It's 6:30.
Spice FM, Malindi. Spice FM, spice up your life. Traffic.
All right, looking at what's going on Mombasa Road, just past the airport, and every 2 kilometers after that, there are police on the way, stopping vehicles, we understand, but that, of course, is adding to traffic. It's already a pain on Mombasa Road this morning. There's an accident on the eastern bypass near the Southfield Mall. The Matatu has hit the fence, unfortunately, and this is affecting traffic from the Utawala side already, so that's going to hold things up a little bit. Thika Road traffic is not so bad at this point. The Pangani Tunnel to town is very fine. There's no traffic, and this is roundabout now. Let's see how that may change in a short while. So what we see having problems right now is Mombasa Road coming out of Westlands and coming through Wayaki Way. Not so bad as then you approach the CBD. Looking at Ngong Road and Langata Road also, it's starting to build up just a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't get too tight, but we'll let you know if it does. Right now, the Southern Bypass is also an option for you to use. We'll take a look in a short while how things may have changed or remain the same, and we'll let you know. Spice FM KE, or give us a call on 0719 012 600.
96.1 Spice FM, Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
You're listening to Spice FM and watching Morning Express. I'm Trix Ingado, and we are in the Situation Room with Siti Muga, Eric Latif, and Du Oko. And we are talking about the biggest story of the day, the send-off of former President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. And one of my favorite bits about the coverage that has been happening over the past few days are the pictures. I love the stories that are being told from the pictures. On page 6, you see Rachel Ruto and Mama Ngina Kenyatta at the former president's funeral in Kabarak University yesterday, all greeting each other. I think this is one of the rare photos. And then you have your typical Wananchi pictures where you have a very old woman being helped to get to the venue. You have the 19-gun salute. We have the family, kids. I think those who got to attend some of these events, be it the Nyayo National Stadium or yesterday's events, got to witness history happening, and they have been well documented. And of course, the army, beautifully clad in their ceremonial garments.
The military for this time, they have.
It isn't just this time. It isn't just this time. If the military look at the parades that we have when we on national days, and look at what the military do, you see, this is one event that occupied our minds for how many days?
For a week.
A week,
Week,
exactly.
yeah.
Now, so we were able to see the military for a week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in most days, we see them for that one day.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing in the whole week is what we actually see. Yes. Now, I need to make a correction here. I actually gave the buffalo the role of the
rhino.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joe is actually a buffalo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Joe is a buffalo.
Yes, it's a buffalo.
Yeah.
Still, some of those attributes the same, though.
Same.
But I think it's more
some
powerful.
of them. Of
Not
course, it's more
quite.
powerful.
Not quite.
Of course,
Not
it doesn't exist in solitary like the rhino would. Of course, as exists amongst herds, but
what is, you see, this is now what is significant. If you look at the qualities of a buffalo, they differ distinctly from that of a rhino in this. Buffaloes are known to have a long memory, and they even hold a grudge.
Yeah.
They don't forget, they don't forgive, and they'll keep looking for you. Worse still, if you wound a buffalo, you might as well leave the country. It is argued it will follow you.
It'll remember.
Yes, long memory.
Yeah.
So if we look at the attribute of a long memory,
Yeah.
then you understand why. But again, most Luos will refer to someone who's brave as a thorn. Thorn actually is a name you give to a cockerel. Yes.
Jogo.
Jogo, yes, that's thorn. But it's an attribute that is given to people who are considered fearless.
Okay.
And I think if you've ever seen a cockfight, as we call it,
Yeah.
okay, you will understand why it is. And if you look at, there are these, you see some of these tame cockerels that have been fed on all manner of antibiotics. Forget these ones. I'm referring to cockerels, the worm-eating variety,
The road runners.
and the tall ones.
Yeah.
They tend to be fierce. If you grew up in the village and you saw this, one of the things you didn't joke around with the cockerel, it'll come after you.
They'll
Yes.
fight you.
It'll come after you.
Doesn't
Even if you
matter
grow,
how
it'll
tall
come
you
after you.
are.
It doesn't back off. Small as it may be, even a child is bigger than a cockerel,
Yep.
but it's not going to back off from a fight. Anyway, please carry on with the pictures.
I love them. Yeah, former Attorney General Charles Njonjo arriving at the Moi Kabrak home is also pictured right there. One of those people that you consider has lived through Kenya's history.
Yep.
So it's just well documented, I think, and beautifully so. Wananchi came out in droves, and then you have students here with the newspapers. Sacho High School students from follow the proceedings of the institution while they're reading the Standard, actually. So pretty interesting.
Beautiful pictures.
Yeah.
I think the newspapers from last week, Wednesday, to today, these are for keeps.
Yeah.
Because they tell you the story, the history, significant portion of the history of this country.
Actually,
And
in
they've got-
details.
In detail.
Details, yeah.
In a lot of detail. Tell you about the second president. They tell you about his rise in politics. They tell you about the people he worked with. The people also telling their story. These are the newspapers that you want to keep somewhere for posterity. Now let's talk about the Moi family as well.
Okay.
In that last 1 week, we've seen the Moi family come out, and they have shown us what first of all they are grieving, yes, but also they that unity of a family that you see in a family. There was all this manner of talk, of course, before that, is this what happens when if Moi dies, what happens to the family, what happens to the sons, are they going to work together? Clearly, Mzee had done a good job of bringing up a family and putting them together. Because like what we now saw yesterday, the Rongai MP, who's now the current elder son of the family, being given the baton, the rungu, by the elders, and then saying, yes, I'm the head of the family, but when it comes to politics, my younger brother, Gideon, will take on the mantle. And that was
decent stuff.
In yesterday's paper, somebody actually drew this analogy with the sons of Jesse. David was the youngest son in the Bible, yes. And after all the sons had been called, and none were found worthy in God's eyes, someone asked, is there another? Said, there's this guy who's looking up. They said, bring him.
Bring that one.
Yeah.
So, yes, the analogy was drawn well.
And I think as far as setting examples for families, we hear stories of families feuding and, people wanting to be the ones because of their age or how they came into the earth. This sets a good example as far as,
Indeed it does.
Yeah.
And even how they conducted themselves throughout those days. You could see there's some proper organization. Who's going to be receiving people at home when they come to Kabarak? Who's going to be receiving people at home when they come to Kabarnet Gardens? How are we going to be receiving the body and dealing with people when they come to Parliament to view Mzee? How it was very clear that this family had this with them. They had organized themselves. They were conducting themselves very, very, very well.
Actually, if you look at that, it tells you of a tradition that had been set.
Right.
If you find a funeral with elders like the ones you saw in the regalia, it tells you that the man they were burying was somebody who had time for these people.
Yeah.
And that's why even in death, you still found that there was a space that was given to them. Then the picture that actually made me smile, it really brought a smile to my face, was when this picture of the citizenry. Forget the big tent where the dignitaries were sitting.
Wananchi wa kawaida.
No, just wananchi wa Kenya were sitting, okay? Even these politicians are wananchi wa Kenya. Remember, your surgeon into politics and being a mheshimiwa is brief. It's not permanent unless you die while you're on the job. And even then, it comes to an end. But when it comes to an end, why don't you follow? Look what the president says. He says he's going back to become an ordinary citizen.
Yeah.
That's what he said. So it's just that when you're in a position of leadership, you are a citizen, yes, but a citizen
VIP.
with a duty. So we accord you that prominence, and we accord you the respect, and we call you Mheshimiwa.
Right.
But the real Waheshimiwa are the people who actually vote, the people who gave you the job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are the Waheshimiwa.
That's true.
Yes. That picture was beautiful.
It
was.
is.
And the numbers.
And there were many.
Yes, and then there was a caption in yesterday's paper of 300 chefs and cooks who had been brought in to cook. And you see, the facility where the funeral was being held, there's a university and a school. So they actually have facilities for cooking.
Yes.
Yes. And I was thinking, all those who had felt shortchanged at Nyeri Stadium.
Oh, yeah, because they were given breakfast and lunch yesterday. So, I mean...
It worked very well.
It worked very well.
And the organization, even on the grounds as well. Indu, you mentioned briefly yesterday the NYS and how the proper security organs had organized themselves.
Yeah.
Very well done. Coming
Right.
back to Gideon and the symbolism of him being given the rungu,
baton, yeah.
right? What does that signify? First of all, to me, it was an obvious thing.
Yeah, it's clear.
I mean, it was proper symbolism that the eldest son is given, and then he decides, all right, so
Give it to his younger brother,
I give it to you, but also I'm holding you accountable.
Yeah.
If you don't do it the right way, if you don't revive Kanu, if you don't lead us in the right path, I'm going to take it up.
Or even if you don't take basically we're asking you to be a leader, and if you don't take that position
Right.
and exert, some kind of authority as leader, then you would be letting people down. And I think all of that is in that what he was handing over, was saying, really, we're looking up to you now, and we're saying, fill the hole that has been left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously the respect that it went through the elder son, then to the
Then it
younger
comes
one.
to
It would have
him.
been a little off if it just went from the
It just went
elders
to
down
him.
to like, what's
What
happening?
are you assuming?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yes.
Are you assuming that we are not here?
At the risk of seeming a bit soft, I usually gravitate a lot towards stories such as the traditions that surround the way we do things. And I remember there are people who actually donated cows to the family for the burial. I think that was really sweet and just shows how there's a Kenyanness that we have that often gets lost when politics is all over the place.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
it doesn't matter the stature
yeah.
of the family, right?
Yes, we want to help.
We want to help.
Yeah, and then there's the debate raging on about the felling of the Mugumo tree Moi planted. It's on page 24 of the Standard. The tree, they say, this Kikuyu Council of Elders says the tree is special to us because, one, it is sacred, and secondly, it was planted by the former president, who we respected. It reminds us of his first visit as president, and for these two reasons, we declined to have it cut, and it stands tall to date.
What is a mugumo tree in English?
Is it a fig? Is it
One
a
of
fig?
those.
Yeah, it's a fig tree.
Fig.
It's a
Yeah.
fig tree. Yeah, it is.
Sacred.
But why is it sacred?
That's where they used to
There's
pray.
a story.
And they believe
Yeah.
that's where God is, I think. I don't know. There's certain sacred
Prayers
thing.
are conducted under the Mugumo tree.
Yes.
The-
yes.
but
in the mountain.
But there is a reason why this particular tree, because you
Of course, you'll remember. You'll know that a Mugumo tree is one that stays on for long.
it lives
It
long.
lives
Yeah.
long. So this you know, when you have this as a shrine, it's not going to be
I'm trying to recall.
Replaced
There's
easily.
yet another tree that
Is
even lives longer.
Really?
Yes, there is.
It's a baobab.
No, baobabs don't live that long, and baobabs are not found in the
mountain
high
regions,
altitude areas.
yes.
No, they're not. When I remember, I will tell you. There is yet another
We're talking
tree
about the mustard. No.
that lives even up to 300 years, and it's a massive tree, and it is found in central Kenya.
Is the fig tree also symbolic in Christianity?
It
Or
is.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So
It is.
do you think
It is.
there's something to it?
Well, one of the
tree?
things,
Yeah.
remember, if one talks of deities, you talk of a heaven, all right? You talk of a shrine, and then you talk of a temple, or you talk of a church, or you talk of a mosque. Now, when people had their traditional beliefs in deities and they didn't have these structures that we speak of, there had to be a specific place that they considered sacred. Now, a tree that lives that long
Yeah.
is likely to have significance because generationally
Yeah.
it outlives everybody. Okay, so it's given prominence.
Right.
I still do not know why, but I will find out why these particular trees were given
tree,
prominence.
yeah.
Yes, but there is I'm sure there's some very logical and very sound reason why.
I think longevity plays a part in this.
Yes.
It does. And
Because
I think
this tree lives
history.
for
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. True.
Right? So other stories, of course, making headlines outside the burial of the former president include what we have, of course, the pullout today being Thursday. The pullout in the Standard is home and away. The cash cow that's milking Kenya dry. Now let's
Yeah,
come
saw
back and
that.
talk about this after you take this short break. So the cash cow that's milking Kenya dry, that's what's in the headline, of course, of the home and away pullout today. This is the one that looks at the real estate sector in the country, that looks at stories from the real estate, looks at what's happening. First of all, what do you think of that headline, CT? The cash cow that's milking Kenya dry.
Is it milking it dry on its own?
Read it again.
The cash cow that's milking Kenya dry.
That play of words, what are they trying to suggest?
Exactly, because then is it a cash cow that is acting on its own, or is there somebody pulling the reins?
So there's a cash cow, but then there's also Kenya that is also being milked.
So essentially, the reference to the cash cow is a specific department within our esteemed government of Kenya. Is that not so?
SGR. From SGR to other mega projects, government is bleeding money, skewed and land compensation policies that have also distorted property
I have
prices.
actually referred to department very specifically. I should have said ministry.
Ministry.
But
Yeah.
it's transport, okay? And it's
And
roads.
infrastructure.
Yes. Now, infrastructure, even better than roads, yes. But one of the things that I think has been commonplace in Kenya is people create or they come up with mega projects which cost a ton of money, and it's our never-ending story. Projects incomplete, money spent. It is a story that we see replicated even within the counties. So if that play of words is excellent in this context, if someone is saying this is the cash cow that is milking, because remember, these
The
large
cash cow should be giving you milk.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it isn't. But instead, it's,
And that's
it's
the
actually
promise,
Instead-
actually.
Yes.
Instead, it's actually now milking you.
Taking from
Yes.
you.
Yes, it
Yeah.
It's taking from you.
It's
taking
what
from
should
you.
be giving you, it's taking from
It's
you.
taken from you. 14 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is a Situation Room, also broadcasting on KTN News, Morning Express. In the room, we have Eric Latif, CT Muga, Trick Singado, and Nduoko. take a short break and then we come back and continue and take a look at what else is covered in the dailies today. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. 96.1 Spice FM, Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Good morning. If you're just joining us, this is Morning Express and Spice FM combined or converged, if you may. And this is the Situation Room. I'm joining Siti Mugandu Oko and Eric Latif. My name is Trix Ingado, and we are analyzing the papers. We are on that bit of the cash cow that's milking Kenya dry. And I would like to play devil's advocate on this one. Because, again.
So what do you want to be, the Kenya or the cow?
Okay, all right, advocate, be the devil.
The cow. I'm talking, speaking for the cow, the cash cow. I mean, Kenya is not the only country that is being touched by this Silk Road thing. It's supposed to go through Africa, and Kenya is just one of the major countries where this infrastructure is passing through. So there are other countries, Ethiopia. I think it will go all the way to West Africa, or rather the Congo, if I'm not wrong. So how come we are the ones, or one of the few, that are just getting the wrong end of the stick? Is it that we are bad at negotiating? Is it corruption?
No.
Because if someone comes to you with a deal, I would give you the infrastructure in exchange for this and that, and then we can work this out. Why is it that we cannot strike deals that are good for us because we are going to benefit from them?
Us here being?
Yeah, Kenyans, the Kenyan government. Because I don't think infrastructure is a bad thing. We could use some good infrastructure. We could use slashed periods of time. Because I like giving this analogy. Traveling to China would take you 12 to 14 hours. There are parts in Kenya that you would use a bus and use. So if I took a plane to China and you took a matatu to
West
Pokot.
yes, you would take the same amount of time. So there's need for good infrastructure. Why is it that we cannot make sure that it's an actual win?
That's why the term cash cow becomes actually central to this discussion, because a cow, for it to actually produce milk, has to be fed. Now we're referring to this particular cow that is constantly fed, and yet all it does is being fed. It never gives any milk. Now, you're asking the all-eternal question that we keep asking in this room.
Yeah.
We came to this understanding. There is a silent ministry in the government. It's called the Ministry of Impunity. You don't quite hear of it, but it's the one ministry that pervades every other ministry.
It's an omnipresent ministry.
Yes, when you hear of any misdeed, that's the influence of that particular ministry.
Yeah.
Because this particular project with the LAPSET, it wasn't just Kenya.
Yeah.
We had Uganda, we had Ethiopia, we didn't involve Sudan.
Yeah.
Our partners pulled out. This is...
Was it Rwanda, I think?
Yes, they pulled out. We have this tendency in Kenya to always, you start off by telling them this is what it's going to cost. But the SGR wasn't just Kenyan, please understand.
Yeah,
it was supposed to go beyond.
Yeah,
the same thing as that road, linking, okay? And then we came up with what cost overruns. Somehow we came up with what had been agreed upon.
Right.
The clever people who are in positions of authority to manage these issues, the Ministry of Finance to be precise.
Yeah.
Suddenly the cost shot up.
Yeah.
Lab said cost, and the partner said, thank you.
Uganda actually said, we will not touch it until you take it all the way to the border, because they don't want any parts of it and our dennies and what have you.
Of course.
Yeah.
But why would they take it?
Why would they help you to start carrying your luggage?
It's just the facts that we have. Kenyan taxpayers are losing billions in state land compensation schemes where brokers and speculators exploit loopholes in regulations to make a killing.
Yeah.
This comes even as the government is set to embark on another round of compulsory land acquisition in a number of infrastructure projects across the country. Of course, now we're talking about SGR. We're also talking about LAPSET. This is about how people are positioning themselves just to make money out of what is supposed to be a good thing.
It is
So
the
getting the main
project.
thing.
It's the
Because
continuous
SGR ideally is not bad for Kenya, honestly.
The SGR itself is not the issue.
Yes,
it's a cost surrounding it. So if you have to buy land and then people have decided, okay, so how much are we going to sell this land for?
And even
How
if
much
you
is the
think
government
about
going to
buying
acquire
land,
this
ask
land
yourself
for?
a simple question. A very good portion of the SGR runs parallel to the old railway.
Yes, so you're not
Now,
really...
there's something called a way leaf. When the railway had its land, it wasn't just the land on which the rail was stationed. No, it was land adjacent, meaning they understood there'd be development. Just like you have what you call road reserves. It's because planners know.
Yeah.
So we're going to need
We're
this in
gonna
the
change
future.
things,
Yes, with
yeah.
populations increase, you're going to
Expand,
need. That's what planning. Part of what planning is all about.
Right.
Now, someone comes along, you'll find. If you look at the history, that land had been sold, which belonged to Kenya Railway. That's where it begins. It existed. Someone sold it. Having been sold, it's now being bought again by the government who owned it in the first
In the
place.
first place.
And
Now-
compensating.
Now, you tell me, how ridiculous can anything
that?
get?
with quite a significant increase in the percentage of the price, right? So you can imagine, obviously, it was not being rebought for what it was sold for.
No.
Of
'Cause
course.
it
So that
appreciates
is where
in
a lot of the
value.
money goes. This is now where you have a cow that's being fed, but all you can see is skin and bones.
In fact, if you're talking about Kenya, the only thing that you're certain about is that the cow exists. Yes,
Yeah.
because you can see the aftermath of its
Of the-
destruction,
yeah.
all right? But as to it being fed, this is the longest con the citizenry of Kenya have had to endure since independence.
Yeah. And our great grandkids will be paying for this thing.
It's a serious con,
Yeah.
and it involves everybody.
Yeah.
This one, no one is let off the hook here, all right?
Those who are selling the pieces of land, ask them.
Yes.
Would you sell it for much cheaper? No, I wouldn't.
No.
And yet, if you look
the
at
National Land Commission is saying between 2013 and 2019, there were 77 projects where they were involved in compulsory land acquisition. 38 billion shillings spent buying these pieces of land. 38 billion.
and they choose. Remember, when you plan for a road or a railway, you also know the path it's going to follow.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, one of the things you must understand about, why don't you look at the SGR? A lot of the area it passes through is Savo.
Yes.
It's not even like agricultural land, all right?
Wildlife.
Now, when the government acquires your land compulsorily, believe me, it can decide for you what that thing is worth. It can decide for you. And most of the land that we're talking about isn't even commercial land. And that's the truth. It's agricultural land.
Exactly.
So how do you give it this massive value that it suddenly acquires? What you will find is probably the person who owns the land, what they're paid and what is gotten for that land are two very different things.
Yep. The amount of money that enters the account, well,
Yeah.
the ends up with the person who sold the piece of land versus the amount of money that has come out of the taxpayers' coffers, because this is what the same person is paying himself.
Yes,
for that
exactly.
land.
That's the thing.
Do you remember the analogy
So how
that
much do I need?
remember the analogy that Martha Karua gave? I really like that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay? This guy takes your chicken, eats it, and when you complain, they take the claws and make soup out of it and give you the soup. And you're grateful to him for giving you soup made of claws from your
Oh,
chicken.
chicken.
They
Yes.
don't even try and add salt.
No, they don't.
No.
And you say, this person is so good.
He's a kind person.
Wow.
Can you imagine? He's giving me chicken soup.
Yeah.
Your
Wow.
chicken.
Interesting story. That's
It's not only
Wait,
interesting.
yeah, it's interesting, but then
It's
what
an
can
ad-
be
it's a
done?
true
though?
It's
reflection.
depressing.
How
It's
can we
depressing.
end this, honestly?
this doesn't end.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Brokers
end.
make a killing from state payments. That is on page 26 of
Yeah.
the same home and away. The law is expected to substantially
Who are
reduce
these
the amount
brokers?
of time taken to complete. So you see all these acquisitions, roads, housing that's being done. Now we're talking about making payments. Institute of Surveyor says frenzy about government projects inflates prices.
In a minute, we're going to be talking about NHIF and how, for example, NHIF wants to go commercial, and they take the contributions that are made by individuals, the 500 shillings that you pay every month, and they use that then to subsidize international medical travel for the rich, which they should not be in the business of doing anyway. These are some of the things that we're talking about. It goes far deeper
Trix
beyond what
asked
we're
the
even
question,
talking
what do you
about.
do? The first thing we do, let's unmask the demons, all right? These so-called middlemen, let's just say so and so, because they're individuals.
Call it as it is.
They're not phantom creatures who appear only at night. No, they're people who live in this country. They probably work for these ministries, and they're people who are known. name them.
Absolutely.
Just start there.
I think
For doing what?
previously
For
we've
facilitating the
Well,
payment?
Yes.
Yeah, but there's
Come on,
always
yes.
Benefiting,
No,
profiting.
there's a
Yes.
fear that
Yeah.
previously
Yes.
there's a fear that has come with
Yes.
naming people, but then
Yes.
we continue to
Name.
suffer
'Cause
because
there's a
we're
lot
not
of
First of
money
all,
at stake.
name the people who are responsible for these things within the ministries. These are the people responsible. You're not accusing them.
This is
These
your
are the people responsible. All right.
You know, being a broker is not an illegal business.
Oh, no. It isn't.
Being a
illegal.
facilitator is not illegal.
no, no,
so
no.
why are you saying that we should shame people who are doing the right
I didn't
thing?
say shame. I said
Name.
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 Name for what purpose?
Because you want to know the people who are involved in this scheme. Because at the end of that scheme, people lose money and taxpayer doesn't get value for his money. So the people who are involved in this entire process, let us see them. And then let them tell us what it is that they actually did. If you are a broker, you
didn't
earn the
do.
money. Explain to us how it is this money arrived at you.
Okay.
Yes.
So who's doing the naming? Media, DPP? Who's doing the
The
naming?
the DP's office would claim that they try.
DPP.
And what do I call them?
DP.
Okay, DPP.
Add the other P.
The P and P. Yes. Their efforts are without doubt clear,
Yeah.
right? But the media, especially our investigative journalists, should go flat out in actually making sure that these people are named. If you are doing a good business, why should you be afraid to be named? You can easily explain what it
if
is
you're
you do.
doing your job and then there's no hint or tinge or
Whatever it is,
anything
it is fine.
of any kind of
Wrongdoing,
foul play or
yeah.
wrongdoing,
Why should you?
Then you shouldn't have a
You're
problem.
imputing proper motive on people who are doing rightful business.
Yes, if they're doing
Just
rightful
like in that
business,
time
then
when
it's
you had the
okay.
maize scandal. Maize
If
is
they're
not
doing rightful
contraband.
business, then there's no problem. This is a thing.
If it
Eric,
isn't-
you
if-
came into the studio, you did what you were supposed to do. Why should you have a problem if I
If
come and say
someone
it is
But Eric-
Eric in this position?
Eric is right. Maize
Then-
isn't contraband, but there are people who make it so. If you have farmers in the country having their maize rotting in the field, and then somebody else pays God knows how many billions for maize, which we didn't need in the first place.
So perhaps then naming would bring a platform for a discussion, and then after that we could figure out where if it's wrong
So
or
you
right
start
that they
questioning.
can, yes, and then maybe laws can be put in place to stop some of the things that are happening or just improve, because if it's good
Naming
business
also
that is costing us, then
And naming also puts hopefully the fear in those who are doing something shady,
Pushing
who would
it.
not want to be named, to actually get their act in order. That's what naming also does.
yeah.
Apart from that, yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us. We hope to see you again tomorrow morning on KTN News.
Yeah.
Go and say hello to Michael Gitonga.
It's always a
of the
pleasure. I
Morning
will say
Express.
hello.
Keep it right here. This is Spice FM. We're broadcasting from Nairobi on 94.4. We're in Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. We have been on KTN News until now. If you continue with us, the conversation continues. We'll shortly be talking about NHIF and the woes that are bedeviling the NHIF, National Hospital Insurance Fund. What exactly is happening to our insurance scheme and our fund? Where is the money going? Have we lost money? Do we need to pay more? Do we need to resuscitate this thing? Or is it just becoming another cash cow that's milking us dry? The conversation continues, of course, and then from 8 to 9, we'll also be talking about the death penalty in the country. Should we not abolish the death penalty? See you again tomorrow morning. Tricks,
See ya.
have a good one. It's 7 o'clock. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Right, so remember how yesterday commercial vehicles were not plying the Malaba-Eldoret route? So what that means is that today they're all on the road and we have a gridlock all the way from Athi River down Mombasa Road. Everybody's trying to then pass through the inland container depot and then from there on towards the border. So we have that snail pace movement of commercial vehicles and trucks. Everybody is on the road right now. This is compounding traffic on Mombasa Road, and already we have a mess. Traffic is moving very, very slowly. In some places, not at all. And unless and until they move, everybody else is stuck, unfortunately. All right, looking at other parts of the city, Thika Road inbound, bumper to bumper, all the way from Garden City and further back also at the Safari Park Hotel. Of course, good to wake up early to get out because now everything is back to normal and a lot of the roads that were closed previously are now open. This is definitely affecting traffic. Let us know what you see. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Let's see how we can keep you moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
We are broadcasting on 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, Kisumu 102.5, Nyeri 19.9, Eldoret 96.7, Nakuru 96.0, and Malindi 97.7. We're also on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter at SpiceFMKE, and our website www.spicefm.co.ke. Nduoko. So we talk about the National Hospital Insurance Fund. We have to call it in full.
Yeah, okay. How about that for a tongue twister every time we're going to open our mouths this morning? But all right, let's take a look at what's going on, or in this case, not happening at NHIF. Of course, at the start of the year, specifically on the 1st of January, it was then announced by the NHIF that there are certain measures that were going to take place. And we looked at an increased fine if you had not been contributing to the fund for some time. We also saw that what was going to happen was that new entrants then, of course, would pay the first 3 months of what was needed for them to have access to these services, but then they would not be able to access them again for those 3 months. And then if you were then reinstated, you still would not be able to access for at least 90 days, and some going forward to 180 days, which was 6 months. These were measures that were seen to put in place to kind of, curtail what was going on at the fund. In the mid of the month, we then saw or heard from President Uhuru Kenyatta that, no, this is not going to happen. These particular plans were going to be shelved. And what was going to happen was that consultation needed to be done before these new measures were then taken into place. Take a hop, skip, a jump ahead into February and the beginning of this month, where we now heard that the fund is basically saying we're looking at losses of 50 billion shillings if the fund is not able to implement these new directives or these new measures that they had introduced in January. We're going to see the fund collapse in the next 2 years because their administrative costs are very high. 54% of what they actually get is spent on administrative costs from paying salaries and the like. And what this new measure was going to allow them to do is that it was going to allow them inject more funds into the fund, and it would allow them basically do their job. Now, if this is not put in place, they will not be allowed to operate and operate properly. Now, I am saying that these are short-term, myopic ways to get things done. What needs to be done is that the real issue, the real underlying issue at the fund is clear. It is corruption. It is mismanagement of funds. It is mismanagement at the helm completely. And if that is not dealt with, all these other measures are not going to feature. I mean, they will work for a while, but in terms of saving the fund, it is not going to work. It is very clear that corruption has dogged this fund for a long time as one agency that needs to be doing its job, and it has not worked out. We need to basically, if what happens is that it needs to start from scratch. It needs to reorganize. It needs to take in serious measures to make sure that the bleed stops. It's more than a bleed now. It's a hemorrhage. And looking at something that people depend on for basic health services in this country. If the real issues are not looked at, all these other measures that are being taken into place are a waste of time. Mm-hmm. Yep. This is the case that we see. So many things going on. So many top-heavy expenses are being made at the fund, and they're not necessary at this point. What we're doing is that we're taking a Band-Aid and we're using it to fix a hemorrhage. It's not going to work. Of course, we saw this experts panel that was instituted by the CS, Ministry of Health, Cicely Karaoke, and she said this panel of experts basically was going to come in and say these are the measures that need to be put in place or implemented to help at least more money come in. And so this is where you saw the declarations that were made that, all right, anybody joining, we're going to hold on to your money for 3 months before then you now access services. You can only have certain number of dependents. If you then have defaulted for some time and then you want to be reinstated, we will not allow you to use the services for 6 months, that kind of thing. And these were measures that were being put in place to make sure that they had more money to spend. Now, unfortunately, that is not going to solve the problem. There have been huge chunks of money that have been missing from this fund over time. 2018, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission did an investigation through the year from January to December, and they found that what we're talking about, the big problem here is corruption. Money missing, money allocated for a certain thing, for a certain project, and this project having not been carried out over and over again. And we're not talking about 1 million, we're talking about 10 billion shillings, 25 billion
What
shillings.
projects that NHIF
Money
do
missing.
have?
Well, I don't know the specific projects, but this is what EACC told us in this case, that they did this investigation and certain projects for which they were supposed to have sorted out were not. And this money was missing. That is the problem.
NHIF has a total of something like 7 million members, principal members.
Around the country, yes.
Total people who actually pay 7 million. Now,
7 million.
Yes, 7 million.
This includes the voluntary ones that pay
Yes.
the informal.
Yes.
Because the employed population is less than 100,000.
It's total.
Okay.
Principal, people who actually pay. It's around 7 million. Now, if you look at that figure of 7 million, and let's take, for instance, you argue that everyone pays 100 bob. You are already at 700
million.
at 100 bob. If you look at the scheme that they introduced where then the minimum then became 500, you need to multiply that by 5. All right? And then what do you suddenly find yourself with? You find yourself with 3.5 billion shillings every month. We're not talking about the ones who pay 1,500, 1,000. Okay? We're talking about those who now pay even up to 5,000. We're not talking about those, just basic 500. 3.5 billion shillings every single month. And you're telling us that 1.75 billion goes into paying people salaries.
A little over the,
Yes. Okay. And then you ask for more money. You haven't told us, given us a breakdown of how it is you need to pay 50% of this money to these employees. What these people do to warrant this wage bill. You haven't told us this. Then you haven't clearly told us what it is you spend on health matters relating to your members. This isn't complicated arithmetic. This is what we get. Okay? Bookkeeping. This is what we spend on this. And this is what we have, and this is the shortfall. Why do you come at the end and instead of giving us that story, you start by telling us we need more money? You have to explain how it is that the money that you're getting is insufficient. And then we'll ask you the question, when you're doing the maths and bringing on these new schemes and telling us the benefits that we are likely to derive from this payment that we make, actuarism. There are people whose job it is, and that's what they do. They know how to do the maths for this. They'll tell you if you have X number of members who pay this, and you look at the probability of people falling sick, etc., this is what the likely outcome. I'm sure this was done. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come up with all those wonderful schemes of even telling you NHIF can pay for you abroad. Why then all of a sudden, we are suddenly telling us there isn't enough money? Already, we were paying more than we were paying before. So what on earth has happened?
I think just to play the devil's advocate in this conversation, I think also if you look at it, you'll recognize the fact that health is actually also becoming more expensive. When you go to these facilities across the country, the cost of healthcare is rising, and this is what NHIF is paying. So if the claims per year are rising, and the amount of money that you people paid last year is the same amount of money that you're paying this year, we have a problem.
Shouldn't that be explained?
Yes, there's an issue. There's an issue of inefficiencies in the system
you haven't even gone there.
We end up having so many workers working here,
yes,
and a bloated workforce.
Yes,
because that's one of the things that the task force has said.
But a bloated workforce also means that you have bloated members who pay.
No, bloated workforce within NHIF.
Within
right?
NHIF.
People who work for NHIF.
Yes.
Task Force is saying we are paying your wage bill is way too high, your operational costs are way too high, your recurrent expenditure is way too high because of what you have. So we have that. Those are inefficiencies. But also with the amount of money that's left, vis-a-vis the kind of service that you're now offering. For a long time, you're only paying 300 bob per day per bed. Now you're actually going to cover much more. You see somebody going through dialysis at KNH, the entire fee is being paid. 3 dialysis sessions per week. That's a lot more money. Cancer people who are going through treatment.
But
there's a lot more money that's being paid. So there's a lot more money that's actually going to cover
but the thing is that
of
these prices did not change today, tomorrow. This is something that has changed over time, right? The 500 shillings that is paid by people,
the paying members,
the paying members, right?
Yes.
This amount was not always what they paid.
No.
That increased as well.
Yes.
So if they were able to see and take a trajectory and say from the 180, 200 shillings, then risen to 500 shillings, all these things that you're talking about, these factors were taken into consideration, hence the increase.
Yes.
So because of the fact that they saw, because they used to pay 300 and going to where now they paid for your full stay, for example, didn't just happen in 2018. It happened before that.
True.
It happened as far back as 2015,
True.
2016.
And when they started
and
saying,
the increase
let's
in the
have
price,
this scheme, because initially
NHIF
was for employed people.
These complaints did not come out. The informal sector did not only start paying for 3 years ago.
It did.
Right? And that's saying they only started paying. That's what I'm saying. They only started paying 3-4 years ago.
Yes.
Right? All of this was taken into consideration.
Yes.
By the time they came up with this plan, they knew that they were not going to pay just a certain amount for beds. By the time they made the announcement that we would also pay for your procedure or for your medication or the things that we needed to take care of, they had done the work. They had done the study.
Yes.
Somebody had provided the information. It's not just some ad hoc decision that somebody wakes up and says.
Sciences does precisely
Absolutely.
that.
They had done that. They had calculated all those things.
So what
now
went
here
wrong?
we
This
are.
is
as
now
NHIF.
why they tell
We are
you we're going
expanding.
to raise the price.
NHIF's role and mandate has also been expanded in terms of expectations. We are rolling out UHC. And UHC is supposed to cover everybody. And you're thinking, so how would NHIF, if we just said that everybody continues contributing the 500 bob, would we be able to offer those services? This is what the task force is saying. With the current way we are doing things, we project in the next 2 years, we're going to start having problems.
Eric,
No, we're not going to start having problems. They're already having problems now.
Yeah, but in the
According
next
to
and
two
we
years,
haven't even rolled this thing out.
According to
In the
them,
next
what
2
is
years,
going
we're
to
gonna
happen
have
in the
serious
2
issues.
years, in the next 2 years, NHIF will collapse if these measures that the president has basically shut down to prepare to allow room for consultation don't come into place. According to them, it's going to collapse.
By the way, whenever you hear of imminent collapse, that thing usually has collapsed.
I'm telling you, we're not starting to see problems now.
No, the
cracks were there a
problem
long time ago.
exists, and they're running around trying to figure out what we do. So,
And now in this running around to figure out what do we do is what we saw come January. In January, in the very beginning,
these crazy
these
things that they went about.
that they're telling people that they wanted to do. In this knee-jerk, myopic, focused resolution finding is where now you find things like this, as opposed to looking at the real problem. Can we talk about these monies that somehow disappeared?
First
10
of all,
billion shillings is not chicken change, man.
money never disappears. I mean,
So,
get that right.
it was
Money
supposed to-
cannot, by its very
supposed to
nature,
have
it
been-
cannot disappear.
It went somewhere that was supposed to have
it
been
also
for
doesn't
something.
go somewhere. Somebody takes it somewhere. Money is inanimate. It doesn't move itself. As I told you yesterday, it doesn't even know it's money. Yes. This is not something that wasn't known. They know very well where that money was taken to. Now, to cover their tracks, which they're doing really badly, they feel that they need to simply ask people to pay
more.
That's the solution. By the way, the apple isn't falling very far from the governmental tree. What has the government doing? Tax people more.
More.
We have this shortfall in our
Meanwhile, you
budget.
cannot tell them what it is that
No,
you're
no,
doing
no.
with the one that you
No.
taxed them with previously.
Yet, it's a conversation that can be had and it can be explained and it can be understood. And if it isn't understood, it can be explained again.
Look.
This is what we collect, all right? This is what we spend. Not complicated.
Just like you said now, Eric, very beautifully, by the way. This is what we collect. And then this is what we have been asked with the introduction of UHC. This again is what we have been asked.
And the cost
to
with
do.
this new introduction
and
is going to be
this is how much
this.
it is going to cost. With what you are currently contributing, there
We
is
cannot
no
do it.
way we will be able to do it.
How difficult is that to understand?
Who's not going to understand that?
Is that not what the task force has said?
No.
What has the task force
The
said?
task force has said that if these new measures are not taken into place, NHIF is going to collapse.
Of course.
No.
Of course.
It
But
cannot-
before that, it has explained. This is why. This is why we are saying this is how much NHIF is collecting. This is how much NHIF is spending. And if we continue with this trajectory, NHIF cannot
All right.
sustain
And where's the
itself
50 billion
with
gone to?
Which 50 billion?
The one that can be
The
accounted
one that
for.
cannot, that you say that there's nothing that cannot be accounted
How
for.
can you say money is not accounted for?
Yes, so of course, money for which it was supposed to be used has not been used. This new rollout, and of course, we've heard about it. And it's not just that they said 50 billion at once. Over time, January, 10 billion. By the time we got to July, another 25 billion. According to EACC reports, and they've said all these things, basically what EAC packaged it and said, look, what you guys are dealing with now is not the problem. The problem is corruption right there at NHIF. EACC.
It's inside.
Very clear. It is inside. And if you deal with that, all these other things that you're talking about will be sorted out. Clear as rain.
You think if we were able to salvage 50 billion shillings in 6 months, this thing would stay afloat?
I'm very clear that this
Because you're
50
talking about
billion,
50 billion shillings
this
in what?
50 billion that everybody's shouting about is
6
not
months.
is not the only amount that they're looking for. It may be what has been flagged, and it may have been what is reported.
So NHIF,
but there's definitely more.
EACC missed.
For as long as you know, NHIF has, when NHIF, the next word is scandal.
19 minutes after 7 o'clock, this is the situation. We're talking about the National Hospital Insurance Fund. Well, warning bells have been sounded that this thing is going to collapse in the next 2 years. And it's 2 years, right? And Duoko is saying, no. Look inwards. The problem lies within the institution, not without. Let's take a look at the weather.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. The weather with Spice FM.
17 degrees currently in Nairobi, and we're looking at the possibility of rain later on in the day with mostly cloudy conditions currently, and a high of 24 and a low of 16. In Nakuru at 16 degrees, rain again. It looks like it's going to be through the country today with highs of 27 and lows of 15. Eldoret already light showers being experienced, highs of 24 and lows of 13. In Mombasa, cloudy conditions, rain expected later on with highs of 32, currently standing at 27 degrees. In Malindi, partly cloudy conditions and rain expected later as well, with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Kisumu, we see the same, partly cloudy conditions now at 21 degrees, expecting highs of 29 and lows of 19, and rain later on in the day. In Eldoret, again, already raining 14 degrees, light rain showers right now, expected to see intermittent thunderstorms later, with highs of 24 and lows of 13.
Breathing life into the 90s.
Everybody, what's up?
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Right, so this morning, of course, we're looking into NHIF and looking at something that I think we need to be very clear on the fact that this is a service that quite a number of people depend on. We may be able to gloss over it now and say, okay, yeah, well, NHIF mandated to do something, provide, but a lot of people depend on this. It could potentially take care of your entire hospital stay, take care of your medication, and then we're looking at the rollout of UHC in this country to say that this would be the agency that sat right in that position to make sure that something as critical as, health coverage for Kenyans across board would be taken care of. And then we see these other factors that then come into play. The fund then basically tells you, folks, we're in trouble. And if these things that we brought about, which a lot of you see as punitive, if we don't do them, then we're probably going to collapse in 2 years. If anything, it should be eyebrow raising. Alarm bells is what should be sounded at this point, because and unfortunately, maybe a little too late, because when these scandals began happening, NHIF has had scandals as far back as 2005, 2006, 2007. That's when the alarm bells should have been ringing, and ringing quite loudly, even before all of these mechanisms had
you
been
know
put
why?
in place to make sure that health could be provided to its
Remember,
people.
all NHF had to do was pay for your bed, and they had a cap.
Yeah, certain amount.
That's it. So it was safe. You're collecting all this money. They didn't have to worry about the drugs. Now, when they entered the field that we had thought was the province of insurance companies, then now the underbelly started showing.
Of course. And it would anyway, because this is a huge cost. And remember, it changes hospital per hospital. And NHIF is going, yes, and trying to strike deals with the various insurance providers. I mean, no, not insurance providers, but healthcare providers. So they have these partners. Go to a certain hospital, sign a deal and agree. This is the kind of deal that we have. But of course, the hospital says, this is how much I charge for these services. If a patient comes here and they are seeking, they are admitted for 5 days for a certain ailment, this is how much I charge for my services. So you have NHIF officers, of course, also stationed in those hospitals, some of them in those hospitals, increasing the running costs. But the main cost for me, where I see it, is hospital cost. The Medicare cost is actually also rising.
And I keep
And there's
saying that
nothing
they
NHIF
did.
can do about it.
Actually, there
I
is.
have to give,
Eric, there is.
In this case, I say chapeau to them, because at this point they had to do the due diligence. You don't just walk into a situation like that without having done the research. CT talks about actuarial scientists and the work that they do to make sure an agency like this has all the information they need, because you're talking
Look.
about a market where projection is necessary in order for you to do your job. The people who project this for you are on staff.
Believe me, and they do. That's their business. They use mathematics, they use
Yeah.
statistics, but they figure this out to a T.
They even
But also you
suggest
have
to
to
you. They
remember,
even
NHIF
suggest to
doesn't
you
do
the
what
amount
this
to
other-
charge.
what
They
this other-
suggest to you the amount to
They
charge.
don't even have to.
Give me an adjective to describe the other insurance companies, a negative one. NHIF does not do what those other insurance
No.
companies do. For example, when you go in with a terminal disease, right? These other insurance companies will start looking at the fine print and tell you, had you declared this before? Had you known about this?
They start
How
off,
long
you
ago?
know, they call it pre-existing
Pre-existing
conditions.
conditions.
That's
so
what
they
they
don't
start.
cover that. NHIF does not do any of those things. NHIF covers you.
Eric,
This
Eric.
is where now you're seeing the difference.
Eric.
Both have actually.
No one asked NHIF to make those promises they were making. They're the ones who came up with the scheme. They're the ones who came and told people, for this payment, this is what we're going to offer. Did anybody tell them to do it? No. So you assume they had done their work.
And at
They
this
did
point,
their
also,
work.
we
I'm
actually.
assuming also that they did their work. And looking at how far, and just before like 3 months ago, CT, you were waxing lyrical about NHIF for a long time here on this show and saying, look, for example, at NHIF, what it has been able to offer.
I would still be waxing lyrical about them because at that point in time,
Because you could see that
the
they have
services
promised,
they were
able to.
not only were they fulfilling, you had testimonies of how beneficial this scheme was. So it
Even
can't be the
today.
scheme, it can't be the plan. It has to be the pilferage.
Just be the management.
This is the problem.
Pilferage.
I gave the example, and I wish we could, get some of these people to tell us exactly what goes on. But just take a step out of Nairobi, right? Where you have a lot of people who depend on this service. And I'm talking about arm and a leg dependents. You know you have been paying because you know the benefits that you get from it thereafter. Then somebody comes and tells you you did not pay October, November, December. You present your receipt and you say, yes, I did, but I paid. And they say, well, we can't see any evidence of your payment. And if you want to be treated, you have to be up to date. My friend, with what you're facing, you will produce that money so that you can be up to date. In small
This is
stories...
norm or exception?
No. This happens
Yes.
on a regular basis.
Exception.
No, I'm not talking about one person who I spoke to on the phone and told me their story. No. I'm talking about reports that were then sent out. Civil society doing their own research to find out what went on. And this is something that happens on a regular basis. These are also some of the irregularities that were pointed out as far back as 2018 by the EACC.
It's about accounting.
I'm not talking
and
about something...
record keeping.
Exactly. No, but still, why are you asked to pay more money when you clearly have paid and you have a receipt, for crying out loud?
Well, once we
Eric, if you don't plug the leaks that you have, it doesn't matter how much money you collect.
You keep bleeding, man.
Yes.
You
And
keep pleading.
as somebody who has commented to me on social media has told me that NHIF are trying to collect money with the sieve. Or collect water with the sieve.
Collect water with the sieve.
Yes, because it doesn't
comes
matter.
and goes.
You are not going to collect even a drop. It doesn't matter what you do. NHIF had a wonderful scheme. There's no question about it.
No question.
And when you looked at how they had segmented and what they were offering, it was beautiful. And many people abandoned insurance schemes and went for NHIF. When I talked about actuarial sciences, why I keep bringing this in is because we relate actuarial sciences to insurance. Not only actuarial sciences work for other professional bodies and even finance institutions.
Yep.
It's what they do. Now, there is no way they came up with those figures if they hadn't done due diligence. They did. And for it to have worked, it means it was working. Then the leakages simply became profound. Remember, it's the same NHIF who had a very interesting story regarding one of their receptionists. The guy was even mentioned by name, somebody called Momanyi, who lived somewhere in Athi River, and where they claim he had bought 8 houses. Now, to the point where it is said his wife even brought, this home and away, people who discuss house, brought people to look at the house, what they'd done to improve it, a good thing. And then the maths was done and said, but this guy earns 100,000 shillings.
How on earth?
Then he was put in a committee, all right? He studied at USIU, he was put in a committee. And so his net, he now grossed 150,000. The maths couldn't add up. Now, this is one
The matter is in court. We may actually find that the DPP may not have a case against him.
It doesn't matter what happens. That's not what I'm discussing. Why would they pick on this one person whose lifestyle completely goes against anything that can be tabulated regarding his income and what it can do for him, and given the length of time that he has worked at NHIF? He can't be the only one. A receptionist, he cannot be the only one. So if that's what the guy took off with, you then have to ask, what else did, and what amount did other people take off with? Now, this really is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely.
But is this not the story of our lives? Is this not the story of, it's just, if it hasn't come out, just hasn't been brought to the public domain, but is this not the story even at NSSF or these organizations? Because money keeps going in.
This is Kenya.
Yes, we keep hearing of people who've retired who haven't been able to get their money for God knows how many years. And they've retired. And they contributed faithfully. Where did the money go to?
Where did it go? And what explanation are you going to give somebody? Because at the time when they started to contribute, you made a promise to them. And you said, basically, are very open about, what you're going to do with this money while you're waiting for them to retire, and then you will hand it over to them. There should be no explanation, I beg later. No. It's something that should be fluid. As fluid as it was when you were making the promise is as fluid as it should be then when you're handing them their benefits.
If
that
anything,
is very
they
clear.
know the time you're supposed to retire.
Yes.
Should they not even be telling you, something? Now that you are approaching retirement, blah, blah, blah.
Be ready for this.
Zero. You will spend more money looking for
Looking
that
for
money
them.
than the money that is due to you.
It's 7:30. Let's also open the phone lines now, and you can join the conversation on our social media platforms as well. Spice FM KE on Facebook, Spice FM KE on Twitter, and 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. What should we do to revive and rejuvenate NHIF? What is it that we should do to NHIF to revive and rejuvenate it, to save it from what has been called an imminent collapse in 2 years? Good morning. Let's take a look at traffic, and then the conversation continues.
Is everybody all right? Fantastic.
Spice FM. 94.4 Spice FM. Nairobi. Traffic.
Right, so Ngong Road has joined the foray this morning. Quite a lot of traffic, just from the junction all the way down. It seems to be quite the mess this morning. So Ngong Road and what we see on Mombasa Road as well. It's moving slowly, but of course the thing is that there are quite a number of police officers on Mombasa Road checking for a certain number of things. So that is compounding traffic, guys. On Thika Road, far back at Safari Park Hotel right now, snaking its way along down the Utali Drift and then getting towards the Pangani Underpass. It's taking you a little bit longer than it normally would. Of course, we've seen an accident that has happened right around Bellevue on Mombasa Road, so that is affecting traffic as well. Langata Road right around KWS. This is where the traffic starts, and it's going to take you all the way down to the T-Mall roundabout, but you'll find some relief then using Bagavi Way as you either make that choice or go then down towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. So everywhere you look, it seems to be a little bit held up, but the Southern Bypass is working for folks now, so you can use that as an alternative. Find out the alternatives, let us know, or where you find yourself in a jam, as it were. Give us a call, send us a message, Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Breathing life into the 90s. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So a task force that was appointed by the CS for Health has looked into NHIF, seen what is it that we need to do to ensure that NHIF can play its role and in what we envisage as the universal health coverage. And this task force has come and said, look, you guys, so what the NHIF was proposing to do, increase the number of, not really increase, but how to collect its funds going forward.
How to collect more. Yeah.
And ensuring that, they stay afloat. If we don't do this, within the next 2 years, this thing is going to collapse.
I think one thing that definitely needs to happen is that there needs to be focus on those who are already part of the scheme, right? And say, okay, how are we going to make sure that we keep these people in this circle? But at the same time, we cannot ignore the fact that corruption is rife. Mismanagement of funds is rife.
Look, if we don't deal with the leakages, it's a waste.
Not all these other things.
It's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time.
Absolutely.
Complete waste of time.
And
Opening
this
up
is
the
one
phone
of the
lines.
major ones.
I'm opening up the phone lines. 0719-012-600. Call in now and let's have this conversation. Daniel in Kisumu, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, gentlemen and ladies?
Good morning.
Good
morning.
Fine, thank you.
Yes, I wanted to say this, that in every institution that is set to prosper or deemed to collapse can be judged well with their board members. You see, we have a bloated board members at the NHIF, and they were jostling for positions in earlier years. So that's what is making, are these people in the board, the composition of the board, really mean well for Kenyans? So if they want to check on the first austerity measures is to cut the number of the board members, because these board members, you see, the NHIF is the only institution that has a bloated number of board members than any other institution in this country.
How many do they have currently?
Many. In fact, even Francis Atwoli is inside there. Many people are there from different quarters. So you see these people, and what we can also say with the NHIS before introducing long-term illness as care. In fact, they were only paying for beds, in which I can say that claims per year during those years cannot commiserate with the principle that was collected on those years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that we can also say is that with the NHIF, these measures that they put on the place, there must be somebody somewhere, maybe even the accountants, to put up the red flag and tell them that this institution is set to collapse. But if that goes on, I think we will have a collapse NHIF. But it was a system that was introduced. It was a noble system. Yeah. Only those people inside are the people who are making it now to have a different face altogether.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Good points.
Yeah, thanks.
Asante sana. Daniel has hit the nail on the head for
There
me.
you
It's
go.
a board.
Just looking at the numbers, we have a 17-strong member board, and then
17.
Yes, 17. And then after that, we saw the appointment of 2 board members by Cicely Karaoke, so bringing the number to 19.
Why don't they just round it off to 20? Come on.
Who are the board members? What do they represent?
So the last 2, the appointments of Latif Shaban and Jacqueline Kitilu, they were to join the board that comprises of, among others, a chairperson appointed by the president and principal secretaries in the Ministry of Health and the National Treasury. Of course, it draws its membership from the trade workers' unions as well as the Kenya Medical Association. And these appointments came against the backdrop of the arraignment in court of several NHIF top officials over irregular procurement
17
practices.
or 7?
17.
No.
It's not
So
7.
I'm on their website. So Mrs. Hannah Mureithi is the chairperson. And then you've talked about Latif Shaban. He's representing the faith-based religious healthcare organizations, right? So faith healthcare organizations have a representative. Of course, we've got a chief executive officer who's a board secretary. That is 3 so far, right? 4th, representing the Kenya National Union of Teachers, Wycliffe Omuchei. Then representing the Central Organization of Trade Unions, Robert Doba. Then representing, of course, we have to have representative from the ministry, the National Treasury, Joseph Mwaura. And then representing the Public Service, Youth and Gender, Samuel Lalachi. You also have to represent the Ministry of Health, Dr. Pacifica Onyancha. Then you also need to represent the Federation of Kenya Employers, Dr. Rachel Monchonyo. Then you also have to represent the Kenya Medical Association, Dr. Jacqueline Kitulu. You also need to represent the Director General of the Ministry of Health, Dr. John Masasabi Wekesa. Yes. Yeah. How many of those?
Go on.
Not 17 though. But
Well,
yes.
It's
We have to have representation. So faith hospitals are represented. The doctor profession is represented. The ministry is represented. The people who contribute to this is the employers and the workers are represented. If you look at it composition-wise, it's comprising good people. These are the people who should be thinking, all right, so this is what our employees, our members as unions, this is what they're contributing, and this is why we should ensure that this thing works. Board members who sit there and oversee an organization that is facing imminent collapse should answer a lot of questions.
Of course, and I think and I think some of the information that we get and a lot of what has happened has been ignored to a great extent. We're looking at 1.1 billion shillings, according to the EACC, money that went towards what do they call abnormal procurement practices. And according to the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, these were listed, these individuals then who had been arraigned in court were conspirators in the procurement exercise that the public prosecutor then said had contravened with this act. Over and over again. Between 2014 and 2018, we have 7 listings of such happening, not in any other organization, at NHIF. And we ask, where did this money go? 1.1 billion, 10 billion, 2.3 billion, July 2019, 25 billion. These are the numbers that we're talking about. And then we say it's going to collapse. It should have collapsed a long time ago. And then you say that these measures, which the president has put on hold, is what is going to save the fund. I'm sorry, but it is not. It is not what is going to save the fund.
There's also the other recommendation by that task force. It was saying, so if we are going to make sure that to expand this thing, NHIF, and say it's the one that's going to shoulder the burden of UHC, then let's not have voluntary contribution. Let's make it tax-based, just like the same way it is for people who are in formal employment. Even those in informal employment have a way of taxing it, so that everybody is contributing towards this scheme. And that, to me, makes sense. Because when you say that this is universal healthcare coverage, then you should also ensure that there's universal contribution to it.
And what is the government's contribution to universal healthcare? Let me explain what I'm asking.
That's why I just kept quiet.
Because you see, if you talk about universal healthcare, there are many models. There are models that include insurance companies. There are models that only work on contribution from the so-called members, and there's government contribution. But there is no universal healthcare that has actually ever worked without the infusion of government contribution.
No, absolutely.
It actually doesn't work that way. Now, what I'm asking is, if you have universal healthcare and it's pegged to NHIF, as you correctly put it, your suggestion would be the ideal way of going about it, because the government actually has ways of collecting money from the individuals. But having done that, what will be their contribution as the government?
Financial contribution towards this? Remember, there's what the government is doing is manning the entire infrastructure. So you're talking about, so if we're talking about the cost of healthcare, how do people contribute towards this? The government is building the hospitals. The government is employing the workers in those hospitals. The government is equipping the facilities. All that is government, and government is people. Now he's saying,
I recall that is paid for by taxpayers' money. Let's just start there.
Everything is all taxpayers.
Yes,
Even the government is taxpayers.
It is.
I mean, it's not that the government is...
So when the people have contributed to this new scheme, remember previously, the only infusion we had from the government was NHIF, paying for the bed, accepted. And you're talking about increased healthcare costs. Yes, it has. But the truth is this. We go back to that same rabbit hole. It isn't as though the diseases known to mankind have increased to a proportion where we do not know what to do. No. These hospitals have already been built. They exist. So when we talk about new hospitals, yes, they are there, but it isn't as though they're not budgeted for and they're not planned for. We've seen hemorrhaging when it comes to supplying basic things like drugs to hospitals. KEMSA will tell you they have the drugs, they've delivered them. The same KEMSA, you'll hear their drugs rotting in their warehouses, meaning these drugs were bought with a very short expiry date. The story goes on. So when I ask what's the government's contribution, I'm saying you want to provide healthcare, not talk about it. What is this thing that the government is going to do to ensure that this healthcare is actually provided? That's what I'm asking.
Of course, I think that is it's a critical question that for sure needs to be answered. It has not been clear then, of course, when we look at UHC and the rollout in terms of what the contribution will be, specifically for the government.
I'm still quiet because I'm not understanding. Contribution financially or contribution in what?
No, the government is the one body that has the ability to contribute 360. It can contribute financially with infrastructure, and it can also ensure that what they've set out to do is actually done.
So the government,
they can enforce it.
The first contribution by the government is policy. Let's have UHC. First contribution, number one. Second contribution is roll it out. Third contribution is ensuring that there is budget, and that budget goes to Parliament, to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly approves those budgets. Third contribution is ensuring that you have facilities, those facilities have equipment, those facilities have medical personnel. All those are contributions. Final and biggest contribution, of course, is managing the entire process and the entire 360, like you're saying. So the government's contribution it's pretty obvious.
When it comes to the management, they have failed. Because this particular situation that we're talking about goes beyond NHIF, it goes to our hospitals as well. If the bulk of the money that is budgeted for healthcare in this country, a devolved function, still sits in Afya House and it doesn't roll out to where it's needed in the counties, then the government has failed.
Well, for sure. And I think we're also looking at a situation whereby even for the rollout of UHC, then where NHIF is going to be one of the key drivers of this, and they themselves are complaining at this point that they see themselves disappearing into thin air in a short while if certain things are not taken into consideration, then of course it's a cause for concern. But at the same time, I'm saying that these measures, these short-term measures, are not the solution.
Not at all?
No.
Let's keep the phone lines open, 0719-012-600. We'll also be looking at what you're commenting on Facebook and Twitter, at SpiceFMKE, at Nduoko, at CT Muga, and Eric Latif. On Facebook, SpiceFMKE, you can also post your comment on YouTube because we're live streaming there as well. SpiceFMKE, it's 7:45. Good morning.
Broadcasting worldwide, Spice FM. 96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
One thing that
Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's supposed to work, because even when complaints come, then you're not really sure what to complain about. And I think there should be no ambiguity where this is concerned. You pay this certain amount, this is what you get, right? When you come and tell us that certain things you're going to penalize me if I haven't done one, two, or the other things, and that is how this fund then is going to remain afloat, then I'm going to see a problem here. Because Because if you say that now when I am joining the fund, you will not allow me then to use the services for 3 months, or if I default, you will then not allow me to use them for 6 months while you still keep collecting from me. And that is the only way that this fund is going to remain solvent, then there's a problem. If these stopgap knee-jerk reaction measures are what we're going to put in place to make it happen, there's a big problem without us having to deal with where the rot actually is. We're touching the surface in terms of what the problem is.
This wouldn't even be a discussion of such serious magnitude if people had never experienced a healthcare system that actually took care of their needs.
Exactly. Because
But
they've
they
experienced it. And yes, this is the thing. You've experienced something that has worked previously.
And has worked well.
The same fund, not a different one.
Same.
Not anyone, a different outfit. This fund with the same capital contribution.
Yes.
Even more members. You can walk into a facility, get treated, spend a couple of nights without paying a cent out of your pocket.
Essentially,
the same fund
you
now is
walk
coming to tell
in
you.
and you walk out.
Yes.
I mean, the testimonies of people who actually did precisely that are many.
Many.
Yes. And I'm talking about the days when, for instance, someone only paid, say, 100 bob. Somebody would be sick. You go to a government hospital, they pay for your bed. Remember, the drugs were free to begin with anyway. So it's a service that the hospital gave you.
And then when they proceeded to provide more services, they also proceeded to increase the amount that
Yes.
you are contributing. So
And you saw the services being provided.
So
Yes.
one essentially knocked out the other and it was fine. You cannot then tell me that there's a problem and the only way to fix it then is for the incoming members to then
It's
wait
for this
a while.
extortionist policy to actually take
No.
place.
If anything, this is a cover-up of the corruption that is happening, the mismanagement that is going on, with the impunity that is happening.
It's about
at
cash
that
flow
level.
management.
Oh, no.
It's cash flow management.
It goes
Look,
a lot-
so
it
so
goes-
so
and
City
that's-
Muga has not. Think about it this way.
That
Let
is what
Eric-
needs to be dealt with if we're going to
let
solve
Eric,
this problem.
let Eric
It's not all
present
these
his
small
case
things
in
that they're telling
defense
us
of
about.
NHIF. Eric, please.
Let's say City Muga has defaulted in paying NHIF for the last 1 year. Then City suddenly requires medical attention. And he realizes, no, I hadn't paid for the last 1 year. So he comes in and pays today, and he wants to start accessing the services immediately. So you see, the money that's going to pay for this is, if we have 10 or 15 CT Mugas in one hospital doing the same thing, we have an issue with cash flow management for NHIF. I think that's where they were coming from. They were saying, all right, so for us to balance out this thing, and in order to ensure that we are discouraging people from forgetting to pay their contribution, to remind you to pay your contribution is to tell you, if you come or with a need at this particular point and you have not been contributing, there's
For
a
the
penalty.
last X months.
There's a penalty for that.
I'm
But-
telling
but
you that
you-
is not
Right.
that is not what is going to solve the problem.
No, it isn't.
No.
But
It isn't.
Eric, it isn't. It isn't.
It's one
but
of the things
it
of
isn't.
looking at it of
Eric has a point
What
in
do we
that.
need currently? We need this amount
But
of
you
money
see,
in
Eric,
the pot at any one
Do you
given
know what
time.
balances this
How much
off?
money is going out?
Do you know what
Allowance?
balances this off, Eric? When you are a new member, you will not get services until 6 months have lapsed.
Yep.
So it balances what you're saying. But if those are the rules and it's made clear to you, you are absolutely right. You can't have defaulted from paying for the last year and then you expect immediate service. It honestly doesn't work that way.
Even the other insurance companies don't.
No, it doesn't work that way.
You don't pay for insurance today, and tomorrow you go to hospital.
You will not get service.
You won't.
Yes.
So it's the same thing that they're trying to do. But I think for just trying to understand,
Eric,
like,
what you're
is it
saying-
that was driving them towards making this kind of stuff.
All
didn't
this,
have-
So we're
all
looking
this,
at the
all
amount
this,
of
you
money
know,
that
something
they
would make
are
perfect
leaking.
sense. It's the background from which this comes from, right? This is really what's bringing about the debate, because you already increased the rates. People understood. We also understand that if you don't pay for a certain time, you want to sort of like kickstart the payment, you more or less go back to factory settings where you have to wait 6 months before you can access services.
Yeah.
Not difficult to understand. But then they come up with even more stringent measures. And they even tell you, suddenly you're saying, wait. I'm being bombarded with all sorts of payments and even newer rules other than the ones we've known before. And then the service that you are supposed to be paying for suddenly also starts becoming absent. So saying, wait, I thought you guys said this, and you told no, it isn't this. Remember, one of the things that people didn't understand for the longest time was that you needed to choose a facility that provides health for you to access 1, not 10. And they give you a list.
Yes.
All right? That caused a misunderstanding until people understood that actually once you choose it and you're registered there, then you will receive the treatment.
Yeah, and faster.
Now, this is NHIF working. So now, when suddenly you're being told a different story, and against the backdrop of monies being mismanaged and this happening, you ask, so you want me to pay more money so that I can fill the
mismanage it some
hole
more.
that you guys have created?
This is the thing. There is a hole that has been created, and everything that everybody is seeing right now is that these stopgap measures need to be put in place to sort it out without paying attention to this hole. The hole is still there. Corruption is still rife. Mismanagement is still going on. So all of these things that they're trying to put in place are not going to solve the problem. It may put cash in hand for a short period of time, but it's still going to come back, rear its ugly head, and bite you in the face.
And the
That
long-term
is still
thing,
what
the,
is going
the
to
task
happen.
force is saying the long-term thing is ensure that everybody is paying, it's contributing to this through tax. Everybody in the country is contributing to this fund.
That
so we
is
have
okay.
more money.
But if you
I
still don't
agree.
sort out, I
And more-
agree.
and
I
more
think
money
so.
to steal.
That would be a fantastic.
That's where the problem would be.
But at the end of the day, if you don't deal with that issue, this stealing that we're talking about, this mismanagement, if it is not dealt with, these folks who go and these folks who are arraigned in court and their cases are still pending, billions of shillings being, siphoned year on,
it brings
year out.
I'm going to divert and ask the question: must these cases really pend? And the question
Still
will
pending
be:
there.
does the DCI, the DPP, do they actually do due diligence to ensure that this thing moves forward?
Do they have a
pending.
proper case?
And
Yes.
mind you, we're talking about 17 officials, high, low, wherever they are. 17 cases just out of NHIF alone pending. If the nets didn't fall,
And how long has it been pending?
2018, we're in 2020 now.
Why did they just cancel those cases?
If the Nets didn't catch anybody who was still pilfering money from the fund, they're still there saying, those ones, 2018, nobody caught them.
The fact
Let
that
me
these
still
cases
keep taking
were
what
they
I can
suspended
take.
from work?
Yeah, this is why now you had an introduction of 2 extra board members, because interestingly enough, two of the board members also arraigned in court over cases of corruption.
But so they're no longer board members.
No,
So it was just replacement.
it was
replacing.
replacing while they were in court, right? They were suspended. Okay, now if the net did not cast
No, what
wide
does
enough,
suspension mean? Do they receive their dues, or any relationship with the position they had is gone, forfeited until the court clears them?
no. Not that you don't have anything.
Remember, we've had this
Are
debate.
these
with-
managers or board members?
We had 2 board members actually, and then you
Why do
still
you need to suspend a board member?
Just remove
Just
it.
leave them.
they've been removed, but now the other officials working within the fund have been suspended.
Yes, but when they're suspended, what happens?
I don't know.
say,
In
are
terms
you
of
on
if you don't
half
have
pay?
anything to
Are
do
you
with
on
the
full
office
pay?
anymore,
Do board members
are
get
you
paid?
on full pay and sitting
It's
at
get a
home?
sitting allowance.
No.
So if you're not coming for the sitting,
You don't get an allowance.
you don't get it.
But
That-
like I said, if the net did not cast far and wide enough to catch anybody else who was working on these schemes, as it were, they're still enjoying their day in the park.
Let's pick this call from Tony. Tony, good morning.
Good morning. The corruption aside, I just wanted to understand, is there IRA representation in the board or somewhere in the management of this organization?
KRA.
Because it's
IRA.
IRA.
Oh, the
Yeah.
Insurance Regulatory Authority.
Authority.
Now remember,
Yeah.
NHIF is not under IRA.
but it is being run like an insurance company.
That's the thing. They took
I
on
think
other
there
they
ought
took
to
on
be
other
some
commercial
professional-
activities.
The professional side.
And this was an issue that actually some members of parliament, notably Simba Arati, had. And he said, look, you guys are running this thing like a commercial enterprise, and it's actually not supposed to be.
That's what the
Yeah,
insurance
exactly.
companies have been complaining
They've
about
been
this
complaining
because they've been
about
getting
this.
a good
A
beating.
run for their money,
Yeah.
yes.
A good beating from NHIF, but NHIF is not regulated under the IRA.
Then that should be looked into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Good point. Good point, Tony. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
5 minutes to 8 o'clock. The phone lines are still open. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. You can also post your comment on Facebook and Twitter. Jacob Dagi says, you guys are talking about 2 years. 2 years till the imminent collapse of NHIF. 2 years meaning after Uhuru's era. Just has to look at it politically.
So what are we going to do? Will it not have really heavy political overtones?
Yeah.
They're being finished. They're being picked on.
Yes.
What I sometimes fail to understand, is it really that difficult to understand who is involved in the mismanagement of this money? As a layman, I think the answer is no. So you know where the money is and you know what's supposed to happen.
It's very clear. You say, okay, you talk about irregular procurement activities. Let's just start with that one. Let's not even go any deeper. procurement did
But
not occur.
even
somebody is
that
responsible.
corruption there
Under
does not
his
bring down.
under his or her management,
Kenya Pipeline
money
has had
was
corruption
stolen.
issues. Kenya Power has had corruption issues. Are they collapsed? No, they are not collapsed. So I don't think the corruption is what is precipitating the imminent collapse.
The examples you've given
it's
are
something
actually
else.
true, but if you look at the two institutions, their functions are completely different.
No. I'm just talking about they have money.
Yes, but
and they
but
receive
but,
money.
but look,
And in terms of who Kenya Power, for example, provides for, this is something that you 100%
it is not-
do every single day by everybody.
it's almost near impossible for
Impossible to do
Kenya
without-
Power to collapse.
Because-
near impossible.
Because
Monopoly.
They're the only-
NHIF has the same.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Those 7,000
You've
people
just
that
talked
you're
about
saying.
the
I
fact.
said
You've
million,
just talked about
Baba.
the fact.
Seven- seven million people that are
members,
contributing.
You just
members,
talked about the
On
fact
a
that they are
daily-
competing
on a
with
monthly-
other. You talked about the fact
monthly
that they're
basis,
competing with other
7 million
insurance
people.
companies.
Yeah, but these 7 million people are still contributing. Remember, half of those are contributing by statute. By law, they must contribute. Today, you must contribute. If you're receiving a salary, part of your money must go to NHIF. So it's still the same thing. You
No,
have a guaranteed source
It
of money.
isn't. It isn't a monopoly. It isn't
Of
a
course it
monopoly.
isn't.
Yes, because that service is provided by the people, and it's a
Just
question.
like Kenya Power is not really a monopoly because
So if
you
it's a
can use other
guaranteed
things
source,
to light
if it is
and-
a guaranteed source and it's being managed
We have
properly,
charcoal, we have all these others.
If it is a guaranteed source and it's being managed properly, we shouldn't have all this hullabaloo we're talking about now. This is what I'm saying. If it is being managed properly, it is not being managed properly, and that is the crux of the matter.
Yeah, I agree.
That is the
What
problem.
I'm just saying is that cannot be the reason why this thing would collapse. There must be a bigger reason. And I think the bigger reason is the cost. The cost of operation, the cost of doing business. They are spending so much money paying people. They're spending so much money, with an inefficient system. And they also have to pay hospitals that are milking them dry. They've just seen this NHIF cash cow. Anybody who comes in, you're going to NHIF.
It is not possible for such a scheme to work if it isn't with the collusion of people who work in NHIF. Not possible. So, if we are complaining that health facilities are milking NHIF, the root of the problem is at NHIF. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who
Inside
pay.
there. Inside there is where the problem is. Like I said, you can put a band-aid, then you say, okay, after 2 minutes it will heal, but the eruption is still imminent behind that bandage, and that is what needs to be dealt with. Let's not fool ourselves that this small money that they want to collect here and there from people who join or those who default is going to solve the problem. It is not. Categorically, it is not. Let's look at the deep-seated issues. That's what's going to solve the problem at NHIF. I dare say that's what's going to solve the problem of this country throughout. Go to the root of the matter. That is where the problem is going to be solved. Not these top-covered issues, solutions that we're looking for. No.
2020, haitaki makasiriko.
Imekasirika.
Haitaki makasiriko. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter. And of course, you can join the conversation throughout the day on Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, as well as calling in 0719-012-600. Let's take a look at traffic, and then the conversation continues. This time, let's look at the number of people on death row in Kenyan prisons and see how much they're costing us. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything I Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM. Kisumu.
Okay, so it
Traffic.
looks like there's a bit of a mess on Jogo Road today, trying to get towards the City Stadium roundabout, moving extremely slowly, and traffic starts all the way back, far back as Buruburu. It's really trotting along. Nyayo Stadium, Bunyala roundabout, we have a problem there. It's chock-a-blocked. Langata Road is a disaster. There's too much traffic on the road right now. Everybody out. The situation on Wayaki Way near Lions Place, very slow, but it is moving all the same. Langata Road, of course, we've seen that problem. Kangunda Road is, free for all now. There's not a problem. The Southern Bypass is one that you can use as an alternative. Everybody's telling me about that this morning. Take a look at Mombasa. Right around the ferry, we have a bit of a problem there. People trying to get out. Of course, there seems to be a hold-up. We don't know what the reason is. As soon as we hear, we will let you know. Spice of MKE is how you can reach us on Twitter, or give us a call on 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, broadcasting from Nairobi on Spice FM 94.4. We're in Mombasa, 87.9. Broadcasting to Malindi on 97.7, Nyeri 90.9, 96.7 in Eldoret, 96.0 in Nakuru, and 102.5 in Kisumu. Of course, the live stream is always up every morning on www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can tag us individually at CT Muga, at Eric Latif, and at Nduoko. Now, let me tell you about the people in death row in the country, okay? People who've been sentenced to death, and they're facing death, and they haven't been killed yet, according to the law. 5,300 as of December 2018. 5,300 people who are sitting somewhere in prisons countrywide, waiting for the day that they're going to meet their maker. These are just people on death row. This is because of capital offenses. You know that according to the Penal Code, Section 204 of the Penal Code, it talks about any person who's convicted of murder, for instance, shall be sentenced to death. And when you're facing capital offenses like that, murder, like attempted murder, attempted robbery, violence, and such, you will get convicted. And if you get convicted, then you are likely to get the death penalty. Initially, it was a must that if you get convicted of murder, you are going to get the death penalty. This matter was taken all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court basically just said, no, you cannot say that this is a must, that this is a mandatory death sentence. Is how you're going to operate, because that way it would be unconstitutional. So basically the Supreme Court said you've got to allow the judge to look at the prevailing circumstances. If somebody has been convicted of murder, look at the circumstances and mete out a punishment that is commensurate with whatever circumstances they are facing. That's not the point, however. A task force was set up to review the mandatory death penalty and therefore start looking at people who've been convicted and they are serving the death penalty, which has been commuted by the president to life in prison. Should we look at them and start reviewing and resentencing them so that they have some reprieve? And that's why they found out that there were 5,300 people on death row in the country. 3,397 of them of robbery with violence. Attempted robbery with violence, 85. Murder, 1,247. Some other people whose details were missing, 90. In those prisons across the country, the 8 maximum security facilities are having the bulk of these people. Others are in the medium security prisons countrywide. Committee maximum security prison has 1,117 people on death row. Naivasha prison has 889 people on death row. Kisumu prison, 444 people on death row. Then the others are spread across the country. So you see, committee has the bulk of them, 1,100. Now the issue here is Kenya has not killed anybody, basically just executed anybody since 1984, 86. And this is because we are also looking at how the international organizations are saying, should we be killing people? Should we be executing people in the country? No, the United Nations has recommended that we don't do this. Other international organizations, the conversation globally is the death penalty is a wrong thing. Execution is not a good thing to do. It's better to have people serving life sentences. This task force that was reviewing the mandatory death penalty also came up with recommendations. One of those recommendations was, let's review the terms of, or rather this death penalty, and resentence these people. But also the Supreme Court had said the Parliament should look at this death penalty and if you must retain the death penalty, then give us leeway as judges so that we can see how best to apply the death penalty. But also, NGOs, international organizations, the United Nations Human Rights Commission have all said, people, let's abolish the death penalty. And I want to raise that discussion this morning here and say that Kenya should basically abolish the death penalty. Instead, you can use life in prison as the capital punishment.
Of course, begs the question that if the Supreme Court deemed the death penalty as unconstitutional...
No.
No?
No. It's
Deemed it as-
mandatory. The aspect of it being mandatory. So you see, previously what was
The
happening
aspect
is that
of it being mandatory
the
was
penal
then
code-
deemed as unconstitutional.
Yes.
All right?
They said, we are not saying that the death penalty is unconstitutional. We're just saying that making it mandatory, that if you're convicted, then the next thing that happens to you is death penalty.
That is unconstitutional.
That's what was unconstitutional.
Right.
So, but then the Supreme Court is basically saying, guys, let's Parliament, the AG, go and review this thing and find better ways of ensuring that we have better management of this capital punishment. Because it's about capital punishment.
So then it seems obviously that then we're in a space whereby there's no agreement or any kind of agitation on either side, because we still have people then, found guilty of capital offenses, and then of course still being given the death penalty. Right?
Yep.
That it's still going on. So
Yep.
there's some quarters who feel still that this should happen.
Yep.
Because that is still what is being then mated upon a lot of people and then being sent
Well,
to
according
prison.
to our laws, if you commit certain offences, the death penalty is what is due to you
Yes.
as a result of those.
Yeah.
But whether they actually kill you, that's a totally different matter.
Right.
In fact, the time when the death sentence, remember this was a carryover from the colonial times, and it was practiced in large numbers during the Mau Mau uprising. Over 1,090 people, forget those 14, but were actually killed, hanged, because they had, according to the courts of that particular time, they had committed offenses that warranted a death sentence. But the world over, the issue of the death sentence, whether it's by lethal injection, whether it's by electrocution, whether it's by hanging, or whether it's by shooting, it's under review. And people feel that even when somebody has committed an offense and have themselves killed, that the death sentence is still inhumane and harsh. Remember in Kenya, we had a situation where a nurse was actually, a death sentence was issued for a nurse who had performed, there was a botched abortion attempt, and the lady in case died. Death sentence. So it's a debate that is actually ongoing.
But knowing that no executions have been carried out in the last 30 years, I think the last one, like we said, was in, if I can remember,
In the 80s.
It was in the 80s, right, 1987 or
87.
so. And those who were then hanged because of treason, two gentlemen who were hanged because of treason, nothing has taken place after that. With that knowledge, we still again have it still being given out as a cause of punishment for, capital offenses.
Yep.
So now I'm asking the question, if we know that it has not happened,
What's
why
the
then-
point of keeping it?
why is the point? What is the point of keeping it and saying that it is still going to be handed out as a punishment if we know that, Kenya doesn't have a serving hangman, for example, right? The last one died 10 or so years ago.
He died.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yeah,
He actually died.
he died.
Of
Yeah.
natural causes.
Interestingly enough, he did die of natural causes, right? So even the individual who will carry out
And that
this-
job has not been filled since.
the position has not been filled.
There's
I do
been
not
no
know. I
advertisement.
don't know if it has been
vacancy
declared
on
open
paper,
vacancy.
But there's,
No advertisement yet.
No.
Hangman wanted.
No.
Or required.
So here it is. It seems to me then it is being used as a psychological tool for the individual then who has carried out this offense. It seems to me, because if you don't have somebody, one, who's going to carry out the deed, you don't have anybody who has suffered this in the last 30 years. So obviously it's a practice that nobody's too excited to employ, right? It seems to me that it is used as nothing more than to psychologically punish this individual, to say that this thing that you have done is only punishable by death. And you live with that as a scarlet letter on your head for the rest of your life. Because
well,
if,
as
if,
long
if
as
no
you're
action,
alive, then that threat is not. I'm gonna kill you,
in
but
terms-
But remember
in
that-
terms of-
but
in this case, it
remember-
works as a label,
But-
nothing else,
But
because
remember,
nobody's going to do it, right?
People who are on death row also challenge those rulings. Please remember.
Right.
And given the extra snail pace at which our courts of justice perform their functions, I don't think these cases are considered a priority.
No.
So they're probably pushed in the back burner.
Of course
But what, remember, has also happened is that these sentences have been commuted. Like in 2016, President Uhuru Kenyatta commuted. I think the number was something like 4,000. Okay, they were on death row, but it was commuted now to life in prison. Yes. So again, remember, it isn't as though there are people whose sentences have actually been forgiven as such. No. There are people who are in court, and there are people whose sentences have been commuted. And this even happened in Kibaki's time. Believe me, it happens in every president's time.
It happens. Because people are on death row and the president has to do something about it.
Yes.
So we commute that to life in prison and then you just stay in prison forever.
Yes.
Which is the other thing that also the Supreme Court said, look guys, this life sentence, you must also define it. Is it life until it comes to its natural end? Or is life, does it give you possibility of parole and, coming out?
Why are they asking us to define it? I thought they were the Supreme Court.
No, they're saying that the lawmakers need to do that. You need to do that in law so that they just interpret the law. They say, you need to go back and tell us what constitutes a life sentence. Is it minimum years before parole? Also look at the circumstances under which to serve the full natural life. So if somebody, say, has committed a very heinous crime and you can say, okay, you shall have like 5 consecutive life sentences, right? You shall die.
Meaning,
or you shall live and die.
This sentence will follow you to the afterlife.
To the afterlife.
Yes.
Right?
Not surprisingly.
And then there's some people who, yes, you're committed to life in prison, but after, say, 15 years, we can start reviewing. Maybe there's possibility of parole. Come out and go through these other rehabilitative measures of integrating you back into society after you've served a certain length of time.
Right.
That is also something that we need to consider. But right now, life in prison is stay there.
Basically.
Rot in jail.
Not surprisingly, of course, there's a task force, like you mentioned, there's a task force that has been, given the responsibility of sitting down to figure this out, especially after the petition that came about from a lot of, society organizations to say this cannot be the case. It would be interesting to know then what is discussed and how far this task force has gone in terms of sorting this out. Because yes, like you said, 4,500 people around the country, on death row, sitting there waiting. It seems to me that they're going to be a forgotten lot. You're just going to really sit there and rot for, time immemorial because nobody's having this conversation, and it also seems to be something that's quite prickly for people to discuss. Okay, so are we going to end life?
But why would
it
be prickly? Because consider, for instance,
they're not doing it. They're not
the
having
reason
the
why you're
conversation.
imprisoned is because it has been determined that your behavior is antisocial. So they're not going to allow you to interact with other human beings because your interactions are detrimental to the health of other people. So they confine you.
Yes.
Now, if it's considered to be adversely detrimental, they confine you forever.
Yes.
Is that not the sentence? What these sentences mean?
Yes, it is.
So now, at what point then?
Is there a possibility that when you're there, because prison should not only be a punitive place, it should be a rehabilitative place.
Rehabilitative process,
So
yes.
if you're there for 20 years, for instance, is it possible for us to look at you and see, well, yes, you've learned your lesson?
In theory, that works very well. The only place where you could argue that prisons actually go about that business of rehabilitation is probably in the Nordic countries. That is where, if you look at the prison system, you'll realize that actually the way they work it out, they give you an opportunity to rethink. The prison systems that we have, the penal systems we have in this country, for instance, guarantee that you'll be worse. By the time you leave prison, you'll actually be worse than when you went in. If there are negative values you didn't have, you'll acquire them in prison.
Acquire them in there.
If they're habits you hadn't even heard of, you'll acquire them in prison.
So the restorative rehabilitative process we're looking at is also something to be considered. Because here, like he said, you're not really talking about coming out a better person. It's either your life is ended or you come out worse. So
yeah, especially if you've been taken to commit. So this 1,100 people who are in committee, right? They are also in seclusion. They're not.
Yeah, because
living
they're
with everybody
deemed to be the
else.
hardcore criminals, right?
So
They
you
don't
are
want them
here,
to mix
you
with
are
anybody else.
hardcore, you are waiting for your date with a hangman. You're here on death penalty. You're on death row. So they just sit there. They're consuming our resources on a daily basis, and yet we want to punish them. But we're feeding them. So let's make up our minds. We either kill them or we find a better way of dealing with them. And I'm saying, let's abolish the death penalty so we don't have to kill them. So we can look at, okay, so life in prison. After you serve 30 years, we shall review you, whatever you've done. It was so bad and so heinous. You need to stay there forever. But let's have that conversation.
Right. I think that's why I said it was a prickly decision. Because who wants to be the one to have said, I think we should get rid of all of these guys permanently? Who wants to be the one to say it was my recommendation that
City?
they actually should be killed?
City, you want to do that? You want to take that?
Of doing what?
See?
16 minutes after 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at the weather.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. The weather with Spice FM.
18 degrees in Nairobi, mostly cloudy conditions. Remember, we said we're going to see some rain in the city at 24 degrees, the high and the low of 16. Taking a look at what's going on in Nakuru right now, we see partly cloudy conditions, and we expect that we will see rain as well later on with highs of 27 and lows of 15. In Nyeri right now, partly cloudy conditions as well, a chance of rain there later on with highs of 24 and lows of 14. And we're looking at Kisumu, where we saw partly cloudy conditions earlier, and the rain showers have begun with highs of 29 and lows of 19. In Mombasa, we see partly cloudy conditions, rain expected there later on in the day with highs of 32 and lows of 26. And rounding things off in Malindi right now, where we see partly cloudy conditions at 27 degrees, rain expected later with highs of 32 and lows of 27.
Chilled Spice.
So here we go. This is
Obi.
This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting from Nairobi on 94.4. Today is World Radio Day, guys. Right. Remember that?
Congratulations.
What do you say? Happy World Radio
Happy
Day.
World Radio Day.
Happy World Radio
Merry.
Day, City.
Merry World Radio.
Happy World Radio Day. Have I said it correctly?
Yes. This is the day when our boss buys cake and we're going to have some cake.
Don't say that if it's not true, man. You don't want to make such promises
Wishful
with cake.
thinking is allowed.
Cake is too important for you to make a promise and break.
Eric
Well,
is
I'm
not
just
saying
relaying
about
information.
him. He's relaying
It's what is
information.
expected.
If
This
the
is what
cake-
is expected.
So long as you see cake within the course of the year,
I should be satisfied.
you should be happy.
You should be happy.
Yes.
Talking about the 5,300 people who are on death row countrywide, in prisons countrywide, 1,117 of them at Committee, 889 of them in Naivasha, Kisumu, 444. And then let's look at what the UN says, okay? So the UN Commission on Human Rights calls for the abolition of the death sentence as a mandatory sentence, and says in the Human Rights Resolution of 2005-59, and says also consider not just the mandatory sentence bit, but also consider even when you sentence somebody to death, think really hard. It would be best if we just completely abolish it. And I'm saying, well, this conversation has also been brought in by very many organizations. The Kenya Human Rights Commission in Kenya has done that. Katiba Institute, they have even, participated in this this case that went to the Supreme Court. What all these NGOs and human rights organizations have been saying is, look, the death sentence, the death penalty, it's a bit too harsh. Let's have that conversation now and say, all right, let's completely just remove this death penalty. The reason why
So
we have
how
not-
should we punish people who commit the sort of offences that previously had the death sentence as the final station where you would be taken to?
life in prison.
Life.
Yes.
And those people who were previously taken just for life and not death, where do we take them?
We also, the same. It's capital offense, basically. Life in prison. So this is the harshest that we shall have. But then even this life in prison, we shall look at it and see, after a certain number of years, then maybe you, depending on whatever crime it is that you've been sentenced for, you can be eligible for some conversation. You can be paroled, you can be released from prison, but then you go and serve and community service, seeing prison officers or parole officers in this kind of things. But let's not kill people. We haven't killed people since the 80s.
This debate is
There are
actually
people who are
going
alive
on.
today who are working in this media house called Standard Group, and since they were born, nobody has been killed. They're still sitting in prison,
all right.
in committee.
This debate is actually being had in the UK, and for two simple reasons. On two separate occasions, individuals who had been jailed for acts of terrorism were released. One, the jails were rather full, and of course, they considered that the person perhaps had exhibited good behavior. Why this caught the headlines was that in two cases, immediately after the release, they went on a killing spree, meaning they attacked people on two separate occasions. All right? Now, in one case, the security forces were wise enough to have followed this person after their release. So they averted the possibility of them killing somebody else. So the person was actually shot. And so this debate has gone on. So someone who has actually been jailed for committed, it's been understood this person actually was convicted of being a terrorist. Is this a sort of person you actually want to release? And then the discussion has gone on beyond just terrorists. At what point do you determine that this person is safe to be let into the public realm again?
Back into...
Yes, yes. Now, it's an ongoing debate. Statistics tell us this. People who normally end up in jail are usually not first-time offenders. If you look at the history of these people, the people who've committed offenses before. Remember my earlier statement about Kenyan jails. Somebody gets in there, gets out worse. So the likelihood of this person committing a greater crime and going back to jail is higher than them actually being fully rehabilitated and changing. We've read of many stories of people who've become pastors, people who've changed their lives and they were in prison. We've seen those. But do you have statistics as to how many people who are in jail who are there not for the first time or the second time, who are repeat offenders? The nature of the jail, the nature of the penal system is what determines this.
Right.
If it is progressive and it actually seeks to rehabilitate, as well as exhibited by countries, say in the Nordic countries, people actually do change.
Well, of course, and then in terms of agencies on whom reform then is placed, of course, such as the prison system. The prison system in this case is a place where, these fellows are put aside for a period of time, and that's it.
We put you there to punish you.
Right.
It's not
and
complicated.
to punish you on a daily basis for the duration of the time that you're going to spend there. As opposed to it being reformative and then rehabilitative in nature. So, of course, this information then is vital. Because to say that, okay, then abolish it, then are we looking at and then say, let's have you there, then remain there for the rest of your life? Of course, the rest of your life means that at some point you will die. And so then you're not being then released back into society. But then looking at the system as a whole, restoration, this information, are they actually going to be better off? Is society going to be better off without this person, mixing there? And for you to actually derive that, you cannot do that then with the adequate research in terms of this. They've been here for 4 years. Are they doing better? In this country, does the prison system have the time or the resources to even go into such research or to go into such? Of course, I mean, it's not even an issue. It doesn't even come up.
What we need to do is to look at that. Look at our prison system and see this prison system needs to be able to rehabilitate people. It's restorative. If we cannot do that, then let's kill people. Let's not keep them there. Here's the point. If you really are not going to kill the person, then find a way of reforming them and reintegrating them back into society. If you don't want to do that, then just kill them. Because they're undergoing torture. If you have been sentenced to this is it, you've gotten the death penalty. Something happened, like you've told us. Nurse, an abortion.
Gone wrong.
Somebody dies.
Death sentence.
This is already torture. Already, when the person died in their hands, they started that.
And this is a person who's being jailed with people who've deliberately killed others.
Yes.
She didn't deliberately kill. So that's why I said the penal system.
So when you're torturing this person, they're saying death, stay there. Look, really, if we cannot kill that person, then let's find a way of bringing them back into society.
Of course, there's another added element of punishment that comes into this, right? When somebody's living on death row and you never know the day the hangman beckons. Well, in this case, one doesn't actually exist. However, it's the psychological torture as well. That they could decide next month that my time's up. I'm going to be popping tomorrow. Really, nobody really. It's torture that you have to live
On
with
a daily
day
basis.
in, day out. That I could be done tomorrow. I could be done the next day. And so I think also that plays a role in all of this. And I don't know if it would be intentional, and if not, then it's an unintended consequence of keeping somebody on death row and actually not terminating their life.
Although on the other hand, actually now looking at the history, if you've seen 30 years nobody has been killed, if you're sentenced to death, I'm not going to be killed.
It's not going to happen.
As opposed to when you know that this thing could happen. So I'm going through the appellate system. If I was sentenced by a lower court, I go to the Court of Appeal, I go to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court says upholds my death penalty, this is it. I know I'm going to die within the next couple of days. So but it helps because you can see the end. This thing of taking somebody, putting them in committee, somebody is 60 years old, they're still there.
Yeah, I think it needs to be clear. It needs to be clear, what are we going to do if the death penalty then exists in this country, yeah, and then say, all right, we're going to use
If
it
it's there,
regardless of what people are going to say. You want to call it human rights, human rights abuses, whatever you want to call it, right to life, etc., etc. Make the decision, but make a decision.
You can't just sit there and just say, well, this is what happens.
And then again, because of the way that the system works, the legal system, judicial, you have judges pronouncing this on individuals. So obviously, it's held in some in some kind of importance that this is a punishment that needs to be meted out on these individuals who do this. So at some point, it's held in some kind of regard, right? Whether we want to look at it like that or not. But some people feel that is the punishment that needs to happen. That's the punishment that needs to take place. And that, as in terms of a percentage of a belief, needs to be taken into consideration as well. Because there's nothing else that can be done to punish this individual for what it is that they did. There's some people who feel that is important. If not, they would not be sentencing them with that.
The people who took this case to the Supreme Court with the support of civil society organizations is a gentleman called Francis Murwatetu and others. And they went to court. So these people are on death row. And they were convicted for the murder of a prominent businessman who used to be a land dealer in Nairobi. And others who had been taken to court with them included the former commissioner of lands and all, who were later acquitted. So how this story, the way it's told, is these guys had organized and planned to kill this land dealer. So they lured him into Kitengela so that they can, the pretext of they want to buy a piece of land, come to Kitengela, and then they committed this murder there. So looking back, and they're saying, look, some of us, maybe the role that I played in this whole thing, yes, I've been convicted, but my role was not the one of planning.
Right.
My role was maybe just a driver. So if I'm a driver, why am I getting the death penalty?
But that, my friend,
If I'm not the one who
it doesn't matter.
give the judge some leeway to look at it and say, okay, so your role was a driver. Actually, you did not know. On this day, you worked for this guy. He's the
Accessory
one.
Baba.
Yes, but then you go in and the judge is able to make a determination and say, this is the role you've played in it.
It is
and
very
the
true.
Supreme Court agreed that, well, give the judicial officers that power to
But
determine.
they didn't have that power.
No, the penal code before was mandatory death sentence. If you are convicted of murder, you shall face the death
No,
penalty.
what I'm saying is, you shall, yes, but did they not, even if 5 of you were accused, did they not consider that this is the one who actually committed the murder? This was the driver.
No.
No.
So long as you're
everybody
part
was-
of the puzzle.
So
Same
long
thing
as
for
so long
everybody.
as you're convicted in this, kill them to inside death.
But
And that's why it was going. That's why Murwatetu was taking this case to the Supreme Court and saying, look, Supreme Court, you need to give us a determination. Because anyway, it had gone in the previous regime before the Supreme Court. These kind of cases had gone also to the Court of Appeal. And there had been conflicting issues on the Court of Appeal. So the Supreme Court delivered this final ruling and said, no. This provision of saying that everybody who's convicted of murder can only be sentenced to death
must change.
must change. You must allow the judge to look at the prevailing circumstances. What role did you play in this? What were you doing? So that removed the mandatory death sentence. But it still says that, well, the death sentence is still there. It's part of our law. Penal Code 204, if you're in murder, if you commit murder, you can go to death. You can face death penalty.
Yeah, exactly.
It's and then we're still not committing them to death penalty. So you have the president commuting sentences. Also, commuting sentence is another thing. So the president says, I've commuted this death sentence. You shall be in prison for life. What's life?
Till you die.
Life is until I die.
Actually,
is life. It's
The need for definition was also important. Life with the option or the possibility of parole, life for 20 years,
And then-
life for you have to detail it. But life blanket, no.
It was wrong. And that's what even the judges were saying. So also these things you need to revise. And that's why I'm bringing it back, because it needs to go back to, you see, these guys who are going to BBI, doing burden of BBI, they need to be doing this in Parliament. This is their role now. Members of Parliament should look at it and say, all right, so let's have this conversation. Should we abolish the death penalty? Should we not? Should we
But
commute
even as we're
into
looking
life?
at the death
What
sentence,
is life?
remember the details that I spoke of earlier on. As a study was done in the US, which involved 30 states, and what they found, out of 405,000 inmates that had been released from these 30 states, 68% of them were arrested within a 3-year period after their release. And what they also found is that 77% were arrested over a period of 5 years. Now, when someone has committed murder, this is where I'm going with my discussion. You need to look at the history of this person and where it is they've come from, so that instead of just changing the sentences, you look at the penal system, because the penal system plays a very, very important role. Someone may not have started off as a murderer, but because of their forays in and out of prison, sooner or later, it's not as though they commit the same crime. In this study, they found they committed new crimes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, if you want to look at the chronology of somebody who started off as, a
chicken
basic
thief.
kleptomaniac there, picking a few things here and there, after some time they graduated to, nicking something off the shelves in the supermarket. Thereafter, they realized that, okay, I can do this by force, and then I'm going to employ the use of a weapon. And then they go even further to ask, you can see how it has graduated over time.
Yes. So if you're going to review the penal system, you must review it in totality, not just in terms of the sentences that are meted out to people who have committed these offenses, but also the actual prison that you send these people to, what it is that they do to guarantee that there may be a possibility for a change in behavior. Because ours, by every look of it, what they do is exacerbate it.
Yes. We don't have correctional facilities in the country. 28 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic, and then the conversation continues on opening up the phone lines now. 0719 012 Should we uphold or should we abolish the death penalty in Kenya? Should we uphold or should we abolish the death penalty in Kenya? I'm saying let's abolish the death penalty. What do you think? Also, you can post your comment on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and Twitter at Spice FM KE. Good morning.
Spice FM, Malindi. Traffic.
Still a bit of a hold up on Mombasa Road. Of course, we've seen a couple of accidents along the road today, but it's moving slowly, but moving all the same. On Ngong Road today, we still, of course, had traffic bumper to bumper all the way from the junction, and this still continues round to the City Mortuary roundabout. Heading towards KWS on Langata Road, it is quite the gridlock, and nobody is moving. And getting into the CBD today, coming off of Thika Road, not so bad. More and more people getting in, and it has opened up quite a bit. So where we have problems today, Langata Road and still bits of Mombasa Road. The Southern Bypass is still an option to use in and out of the city. So there's an option for you guys if you're not already too far along. Things have eased up on the Eastern Bypass as well for an opportunity to get onto and out of Thika Road and Mombasa Road respectively. SpiceFMKE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know what you see.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Should we repeal? Should we abolish the death penalty? 0719 012 Let me also just throw the spanner in the works. A serial killer, do they deserve to live?
You know, when you talk about a serial killer, you are not talking about someone who is in a right state of mind, to be very honest.
They're sick.
That's a person who's unwell. Somebody to make killing other human beings a hobby, something that they take joy in, because you can't be a repeat offender of that sort of offense unless you derive some pleasure from it. That person is not well. Places that are more advanced than we are, well, they have institutions that look into the minds of such people. They're penal institutions, yes, but they are for what they call the criminally insane. Yes. People who are really many eggs short of a dozen.
Two in a tray.
Yes, there's that little detail. Yes, so you need to look at this thing differently.
But remember, there are families. When you talk about a serial killer, there's more than one family that is aggrieved here. More than one family that has lost a loved one. Are you telling me that it will be just for them to see the person who killed their kin walking around?
You know, my
Knowing
friend,
full well that they killed, knowing exactly what they were doing.
even if
It was
you
deliberate.
have you ever witnessed mob justice? I have. And one of the things that puzzled me,
You call it witness. Hold on, let's talk to Lydia. I'm going to ask you this witness thing.
CT Eric wants to know exactly
24
what role
minutes
you
to
played in
9,
this.
0719012600. Good morning, Lydia.
Good morning, Spice FM. Thank you for this good subject. Under President Kibaki's government and Mudi Owori and Rafael Tuju, Kibuta Kibwana, they gave a lot of respect to the prison department. They had parties, made family gatherings to come and see their prisoners.
Yep.
And this is a good teaching for families to take care of their loved ones in prison. Sometimes they are imprisoned wrongly. Sometimes they are so dangerous that the family can teach you that they are not worth to stay alive.
Right.
Everybody's life is in danger. Then that one needs a death penalty. Otherwise, families should all come and help to be with their loved ones in the prison, like how President Kibaki and Mudi Owori
What they
started
did.
with. Yes.
So Lydia, you don't think we should abolish the death penalty? We should retain the death penalty?
But it should be given very difficult chance to progress. If it is wrongly, like if somebody hates you, they just finish you. You know, you are an honest hard worker, and these grabbers and robbers finish you. That should not be allowed.
Okay.
Only insane should be thought carefully.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia.
thank you, Lydia.
Thank you. 0719012600. You can also post your comment on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Facebook and Twitter is Spice FM KE. The question, of course, we're asking is, should we retain or should we abolish the death penalty? I am saying we should abolish the death penalty. People have not been killed in this country since 1987. We have 5,300 people on death row. They're just sitting, eating our money in prison.
You know,
Eating our resources.
I was talking
Let's hear
about
from Zachary before you tell us about the mob justice. Zachary, good morning.
Hi, guys.
Hi, morning.
Oh, morning to you guys and happy Radio Day, as I have heard you say.
Oh,
Yes,
right.
it's Happy World Radio Day. Asante sana.
Definitely. And Mr. Latif, you are growing. I saw you are whatever on on the media, and the beers are inspiring. So let them be.
It's coming along well, eh?
You are starting to look like Mr. Pythagoras and Socrates, and you know those guys who are beers are very argumentative and their opinions are often sought.
Okay, there you go.
Like that. But now,
Yes.
let me say this.
Tell us, Zachary.
Immediately after the last hanging, you see, so just after 3 years, and then we after 5, I think 6 years, yeah.
Yep.
And then we had the introduction of multi-party democracy, yeah.
Yep.
And therefore, for you to survive politically, if you are the president, definitely you had to look good to people, yeah.
Yep.
Not that those guys in prison and who have been committed to die, that they don't deserve to die. Actually, some of them are heinous people, okay.
Yeah.
But then look at it this way, yeah. If you, Mr. Latif, you are to become the president, okay, today, and then you are saying that we have got 4,000 men waiting to be hanged, yeah? Definitely that should not be your legacy, that during Mr. Latif's presidency,
4,000 people were killed.
Definitely, yeah. So you see, this thing is political. Look at it look at it from a political angle. Okay?
So, Zachary, should we or should we not abolish the death penalty?
If it is going to be hanged on the political leanings, then it should be. We should do away with it, so that those guys don't work. If you are committed to die,
you just live.
You are not allowed. You are just allowed to sit down and eat and be controlled. There are hours that you are going to see the sun. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So this should be abolished.
Thank you, Zachary. Naomi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I am very well. I am saying
Yes.
that we should not abolish the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
In society, there are people who are misfits. There are some people who are not supposed to live in civilized society. For example, a person who will rape a child and kill them.
Yep.
Surely they should be removed from society because they will cause a lot of harm.
Mm.
So what I'm thinking is that there are some crimes which definitely people need to be killed. They are just savages.
Mm-hmm.
They are not human.
You need to remove them from our society.
You need to remove them from society.
So Naomi,
Because
you're saying
somebody will come and, yes,
we should retain the death penalty and not commute.
we should retain the death penalty because even now that there are so many people who are waiting to be hanged in committee.
Yep.
That is actually the government not doing the right thing. As long as that remains in our law book, they should be following the law and killing them. Or,
Yes.
yes, they cannot keep them. They are just wasting taxpayers' money there. What are we doing with them? Some of the crimes are gruesome. They are not human people.
Yep.
You cannot, you can very easily say that if it is a relative of yours and you see people how they have been killed, cut into pieces, put in a gunny bag, and then you tell me,
Well, she's got a point there.
Thank you, Naomi.
She's got a point there because when it hits close to home, then of course you would say, look, the only kind of pain that I feel as an individual is for this one to be removed. The way he took mine, right?
Yep.
Or the way he or she took mine, the only kind of compensation that you will
Is
get
they
to
must
me
also
is that
die.
they must also die.
Which I think this segues now into what you were telling us about mob justice.
That's actually what it is, because usually people who find themselves in that unfortunate position are pickpockets or somebody who snatched a purse. Now, if you look at the people who throng there, what I marveled at is where people get boulders. You in the middle of the street, there's no stone anywhere.
And suddenly,
they're boulders. And then there are those who find tires. You wonder, where do they get these tires from?
Yeah.
Matches.
Yes,
People
and you realize that these are people who probably at some point or the other have been
fallen victim.
Yes, and all the anger and frustration that they had is now being let out on this one. And what you find surprising is, one moment you're walking with these well-dressed people who seem sober. The next moment, the frenzy, you look at their faces,
and you wonder what has
happened. It's a transformation. Everybody becomes murderers.
Yeah.
And they must throw in their kick. You wait
So
to
it's
hear
because of the pain that they feel, and they feel that this kind of people are the ones who caused me that kind of pain.
Naomi has actually exemplified it perfectly, because somebody is going to relate to the pain they have felt.
Yeah.
And they do not see why this person should continue living.
Sami in Magarini, good morning.
Yes, good morning, boys.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Boys and-
Sammy.
Boys and girl.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
I would like to contribute that actually I think this death sentence should be maintained, because we normally have some other people, like for example the Al-Shabaab. What would we do with the Al-Shabaab once we find that they are actually guilty? They should be, because those people are ready to die, they are ready to blow up themselves, they don't actually care about their lives. So I think they should be contained so that we have them we actually sentence them, or we sentence them according to the discretion. Those who deserve to be hanged should be hanged. Those who deserve to be sentenced to life sentence, then should be the law should be actually be clear about that, because we will have these people in our society causing more harm than actually they should expect them to do so.
Sami, what should we do with the 5,000 people who are currently on death row?
Actually, I think we should actually see how how serious their commitment was, whatever they committed. You know, there are some people actually did out of passion, out of anger and whatever. But there are those who actually planned to do so. So I think the law should take discretion that for those who committed out of hunger should be considered. Those who actually planned and they meant what they were going to do should actually be hanged. And those with the Al-Shabaab cases should be hanged automatically.
All right. Thank you, Sami. You know what this task force is actually doing? It's looking at all these cases and saying they are working up a timetable for resentencing of these people. Not so that you are therefore now hanged for real, but just resentencing and saying, allowing now the judges to, after the Supreme Court's decision, allowing the judges to look at the circumstances and saying, all right, you didn't fully deserve the death penalty. You maybe deserve the death penalty. So probably what Sami is saying is, all right, so those who are found in this second round of relooking at their cases, found to really deserve the death penalty, they should be killed. We should remove them.
I think because also the emotive nature, especially amongst those who've been left behind by the victim, this comes into play. And I think those are some of the things that will be considered here. Because then you don't want to seem to be applying what would be known as justice only on one side. Justice then, when it's applied, has to be across board. Right? And I think that is now where the responsibility then becomes very heavy when a lot of these sentences then are put out, or when these punishments then are prescribed. Because are you being seen to have applied justice across board on the side of those who are asking for it, and also on the side of that one who has committed the crime? So I think that's where it becomes really prickly, because then you say, okay, what's enough and what's not enough? The groups around the world are going to ask you about human rights, and you don't have the right to take away somebody's life. But then again, here is this individual who took away somebody else's life, regardless of the circumstances.
An eye for an eye, a life for a life. It's 13 minutes to 9 o'clock. This is a situation. The phone lines are still open. We'd like to have this as a bungalow 90 this morning. 0719-012-600. Should we retain or should we abolish the death penalty in the country? Good morning.
So here we go. This is unbelievable.
Good nostalgic golden sound.
All right, are you ready?
And the very best of talk radio. Only on 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
If you've sentenced somebody to death and then you go and commute them to a life in prison, and when they are living in that facility at Kamiti Maximum, at Naivasha, Kisumu, or anywhere across the country, Shimolatewa and the rest, then you should be prepared to kill them.
Doesn't commuting a sentence doesn't then commuting a sentence take away from the weight of what this individual actually did?
It does.
Yeah, I would say to a high so that's what I'm saying. In the very first place, don't give that as a punishment. If you know that at the end of the day, what we're going to do is commute it. And I do agree. If this is what it is, then go ahead. If not, don't apply it as a punishment.
Let's remove it altogether.
Let's be very clear. If we're removing it, we remove it. Because right
if
now we're kind of like,
we do it.
Yes. If we're keeping it, we do it. Really. Because why prescribe it as a punishment if it is not going to happen? How many have been prescribed over the last 30 years? We have 5,000 people sitting there right now, and it has not happened.
Some have died.
It doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Yes, some have died, but consider also that there are very, very many cases that turn out that the eventuality is that somebody was actually wrongfully jailed. Now, it's not as though it's 50%, but it's a number.
Yeah.
Remember, this isn't a question of how many you find guilty. You know, the rule of thumb, according to those who understand the law, there is a term they even use for it. But essentially, that one life is important. You cannot afford to have a situation where there is no recourse to rectify something that had gone wrong. Now, if you apply the death sentence, that's what you'd be saying. And so the possibility of somebody being hanged or killed when they themselves were actually not guilty, you've actually raised it.
Yeah.
Now, if the idea is to remove someone from society, by jailing them, you have removed them. They're no longer in society.
But for how long should you keep them in that jail?
Indefinitely.
Why not kill them?
So
if you believe that they've done something that they ought not to be with us, just like Naomi was saying. If you've considered them inhuman enough, they don't belong where we are.
Let's take the discussion further. These people who commit these very inhumane acts, the question that always arises, are they in the right state of mind? Are they normal functioning people?
And before they take a plea, that examination is done.
That examination may very well be
psychiatric
done.
examination, and then the psychiatrist comes and says this person is sane enough to actually go through this trial.
You do know that the findings of the psychiatrist can also be challenged.
Yeah, and that's why there's appeal.
Yes, and remember, we categorized. There are people who are still in jail because they have appealed and their cases have not been heard. There are people who are in jail because they have actually been forgotten. Sincerely, they've been there long enough. They've been forgotten.
They're part of the woodwork.
Yes, and they have fitted in, and they've long assumed this is actually their home. Remember, we've had cases of people who actually commit crimes so that they can be taken back. Why? They can't fit back into what you call normal society. So they'd rather stay in prison. It's an ecosystem they understand.
Yeah, there was the famous case of the young lady in the US who was actually, she served, I believe it was a 16-year sentence. And after that, she basically came and said, you know what, I'll work for the prison system, but I can't live out here anymore. Just let me stay. And actually was readmitted into the prison system, and she lives in prison.
She lives in there?
Yep.
So some of these cases that have been reviewed by the courts as of February 2019, people who were on death row and then they applied for a review of their cases. Sentence upheld, 2 cases. Out of 67 cases, 2 sentences were upheld. So those ones still are on death row. But then those who are released unconditionally, 1 was released unconditionally. 1 had their sentence reduced to 3 years. Imagine from death, you're jailed to 3 years. 1 was had their sentence reduced to 8 years. No, those were 2 people. Reduced to 10 years, those were 3 people. Reduced to 12 years, 2 people. Reduced to 14 years, 1 person. All the way to reduced to 42 years, 1 person. So you see, out of 67 people who were on death row, the courts reviewed their cases and they found only 2 deserved to be on death row.
And after how long were those cases under review?
Now, because of this particular task force and what it was working on doing and ensuring that we have this review of these cases. Now, these 2 people, however, are still on death row. They are not dead since February last year. Today is the 13th. This was since we're looking at data from the 25th of February last year.
Which is why I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if there's certain
Should we
quarters,
not kill them or just release
quarters
them?
of society that are actually hoping that this agitation will go in the opposite direction and that it will be upheld and it will start as a practice again in the system in this country. It can't be ignored that there are quite a number of people who would feel that way. I mean, this is why you have the same court system that says that a certain way would be unconstitutional. The same court system within where you have judges and magistrates then sending this out as a punishment because they feel that is the only thing.
This is the only thing.
Regardless of whether the practice has been in play for the last 30 years or not, they still feel that it should be.
It should be upheld.
Yes. In the judicial system, not individuals who are out on the street picketing, those who are the custodians of the law.
After reviewing the evidence brought before them, they think, "Whoa, my good Lord,
this is the punishment." And we're talking about 2 years ago. Over the last 28 years, nothing has happened, but they still feel.
Do we have cases?
Even with all the clamor and the discussion, this is what it should be.
Do we have cases that have been reviewed and instead of, say, a life sentence, they've given you death?
Yes. There are cases where people have appealed. So maybe you've taken to court and you appeal a lengthy prison sentence or you're appealing life imprisonment and the Court of Appeal says, in fact, looking at what you did, you deserve to die.
So it goes in the opposite direction.
It also applies. So is this a judge who's looking at the evidence brought before them and they're thinking, you did this, you did this, you did the other, you planned this, you were completely aware of exactly what you wanted to see as the outcome of what you were doing, to see this person dead. You even went ahead maybe to decapitate them and all. You deserve to die. You don't deserve to come back. Now, in such cases, by the way, when you think about it, such a person deserves to die, in my opinion. But if you're not going to kill them, if such a person has done all those things, and then you say, okay,
and you still decide, okay, we're not going to
die, but we can't kill you because human rights, and then just remove the option of deserving to die.
But actually, when you talk about human rights, by the time you're committing certain things, you have actually removed yourself from that consideration.
You've thrown it out the window, my friend. By the time you take another life in some of the gory, inhumane acts that we have seen,
you've removed
deliberate inhumane acts. You removed you removed the right because you didn't act as a human. Then you can't come now later and say we should treat you as one. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So I think we need to demarcate this thing and make it very clear. Of course, it could be that this is why this particular task force, I believe they're still in
They're still
deliberation,
reviewing, yep.
right? Still in review, still in deliberation, are looking at all of these things one to the other. Because, I mean, we've got some terrible stories out there of what has actually happened to people, right? And they're saying, taking all these things into consideration, yes, taking into consideration what civil society organizations are saying, human rights bodies are saying, talking about the right to life, but then looking at the nitty-gritty to saying, you know, what are we really talking about here? The fact that we have so many people on death row and those have not been overturned is a huge light in one direction, saying that still the feeling is that these folks ought to
Imagine catching one of the people who, for example, attacked Westgate or the Dusit Mall, right? 14 Riverside. You caught one of them, you took them through the justice system, and then you said, you know what, you are guilty for the murder of 14 people at 14 Riverside. But we can't kill you because of human rights.
Because we're taking your
so
human rights
So we're going to
into
be feeding you in
consideration.
committee. We're going to be
Taxpayers'
bringing
money.
you books. We tell you to read. We're going to be giving you an opportunity to exercise, wake up in the morning, enjoy the vitamin D.
And earn 2 shillings a day kind of thing.
And earn some cash and live there for life.
You just don't earn it, you have to work.
You have to work for the 2 shillings, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these particular guys don't work. Sit there, do nothing, let's feed you.
You know,
let's clothe you.
When you put it that way, the conclusion you'd come to is that these people should actually be killed. But if you look at the arguments that the pro-life, because this is again a pro-life argument, is that everyone deserves a second chance. To put it very simply. No, wait.
Okay.
I am simply telling you what people
the pro-lifers would say.
Yes, and they say that even if this person deliberately went about doing the wrong thing, that they must be given an opportunity to actually change.
Oscar is in Kakamega. Good morning, Oscar.
Okay.
Good morning, Spice FM.
How are you doing?
Morning.
I'm doing fine. And
Uphold or abolish?
Uphold, as well as this. Let us uphold it. But I really wanted to say something about it. I actually spent about 3 months at Kakamega main prison doing my attachment. And I tried interviewing some friends and family members of these serial killers. And what I have to admit is that I came a bit skeptical about human nature, about somehow paranoid.
Yes.
Because most serial killers, somebody like Bob and Marley, who killed 13 people to prevent an earthquake, and actually used his cigarette to burn his penis. I'm sorry to say that. Some of the people who can say that they are insane. Yeah. So people like those who are suffering from, we can say they are sociopaths or psychopaths suffering from antisocial personality disorder, or much more of. So these people, Sigmund Freud describes them to be people who lack the super ego. They lack the feeling of empathy, the capacity to feel empathetic about people. So there are people who can be actually taken over so that they can prevent more of these things happening around.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you very much. 0719012600. Conversation continues on our social media platforms. That is Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic, and then we switch gears a little bit and have another conversation. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Traffic.
So Thika Road has just acquired dream status because there's no traffic whatsoever. Everybody's moved off and gotten into the city centre without too much of an issue, as opposed to what we saw earlier. So traffic update for Mombasa Road, of course, moving a lot smoother than it was previously. We still have a bit of a bottleneck on Ngong Road and Langata Road, trying to get us either out towards Bagathi Way or other options, but it's not as bad as it was before. So right out of traffic hour, at least moving a little bit better, and you can now get where you're going without too much of a problem. Unless something out of the ordinary that you'd like us to know about, do let us know. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Give us a call if you must on 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Happy World Radio Day. Today is World Radio Day, the 13th day of February 2020. The World Radio Day is celebrated every year, of course, right? It's about celebrating the development of radio and radio around the world and what radio has done. Of course, looking back at our radio development in Kenya from the days of VOK. What was it before VOK? It was something before VOK.
I only remember it as VOK.
And then it becomes KBC, and then there's liberalization of the airwaves. Mm-hmm. And the proliferation of radio stations. Now we have more than 100 radio stations across the country, just serving Kenya. Mm-hmm. In English, Swahili, in vernacular languages, community radio stations, some serving just, small communities. So it's a good thing that, it has opened up the airwaves, allows us to have a conversation with everybody. C.T. Muga.
One of the things that I was looking at with regards to what we had said earlier was how it is the present system in this Kenya has actually attempted to put a human face to capital punishment. One of the things that they've had for the longest time is what you call beauty pageants. And it brought forth the mention of one particular inmate whose name was Ruth Kamande, who was there imprisoned for having stabbed her boyfriend to death in 2015. Okay?
And not once.
Oh, no. It wasn't once. There are those who'd explain it as rage. If you're looking for psychological explanations, there's no shortage. But that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to look at is actually the role of chance. We've mentioned it in passing from time to time, but when I look at what is happening in this country and I look at the way the country is being managed, I have to ask this question. Is it that we have the leaders we have by bad luck? Is it that it is a punishment from God? Is it that we're incapable of choosing leaders who can actually do what they're required to do? Do we bring the devil into this whole discussion? And when you look at the outcomes of what happens to our lives, again, where do we place it? Is it that decisions that we've made have brought forth the consequences that we now see? Or is it that, again, the mistake we made in choosing these people, the debate goes on. But the role of chance, unfortunately, is something that permeates and pervades our lives. And it depends on where you stand and what your belief system is. You will look back and either attribute it to the influence of God or the nemesis of God, Satan. Or if you're inclined towards even more infinity, you will lay blame at the foot of somebody who believes in practicing remote control through nefarious means. But whatever it is, there'll be an explanation that suits your purposes and which you can easily accommodate. But unfortunately, when you talk about chance, you talk about providence, you talk about an act of God, it has permanent and often irreversible consequences in our lives. This morning we're talking about the NHIF. The things that we see happening there. Is it just gross mismanagement, or are we going to talk about providence again? This is my view. You can choose to run away from the truth and give it any baptismal name that you like. But the reality will always win the day. And the reality is this. Kenyans are responsible not only for the present the present day issues that they are involved in, but they're also responsible for their future. And this responsibility is not shown in the number of words we utter regarding this or the things we have to say, but it's in what we think and what we do. And this is what identifies us as serious contributors to whatever fate we find ourselves in, whatever situation we find ourselves in. Because for every negative situation that you can point to, you will find others that you can point to that are completely the opposite of what you say. So I am saying this. Whether you want to talk about providence or chance, or whether you want to talk about witchcraft, or whether you want to talk about bad luck, you make your good luck, you make your bad luck, and you determine who you are. So the role of chance is determined by you, not circumstances.
So why call it chance?
Because that's the language people would like to use. If too
So
many
you're saying
things
there's
happen,
no chance.
I am saying there is nothing like chance.
There's no such thing as chance.
I'm saying there's no such thing as chance.
No, come on. I think there is. There's opportunity that comes in. Now, what you do with that opportunity, what you do after that, you can't be the one that determines your chance.
Oh yes, you are.
Being in the right place at the right time doesn't mean that you.
It isn't even right place at the right time. Let me explain what I mean. How many people talk about harrowing situations they've been in, uncomfortable situations that they curse, and then they look at the outcome yearly and say, if it wasn't for this positive thing that I'm now seeing would not have happened. So it means at the time that happened, the issue of you being at the wrong place at the wrong time doesn't actually arise, does it?
Yeah, but you didn't determine you being there.
Yes, you determined you're being there. You were there. The only person you might excuse a group of people are children. But then decisions are made for them by their parents. I went to a certain school and met certain people. And by my association, later on in years, these people become useful to me. Is it chance? No. In that same school, there'll be people who went to that same school, maybe that same class, but they don't have the association you have. So, did they make the effort? Is it the role of chance that they were able to relate to these people the way they do? Yet they were in the same environment, same space, at the same time.
So let's give examples, practical examples. Michael Gitongo of KTN News he told us the story. Walking up Mbagathi Road, President Daniel Arap Moi comes, stops the motorcade, addresses people down there, and then Moi looks at Gitonga and tells him, Vijana, kuja. Gives him 10,000 shillings. Is that not chance?
No.
Ndu, is that not chance?
He singled out somebody and said, chance on whose part now?
On Michael's chance.
Right, because if he was not there on that day, he would not have received that money.
Yeah, but it's chance. Yes. I mean, he's the only one who was given the money.
Chance would have been if the president drove to his house and looked for him and gave him the money, because out of all proportion, what is the likelihood? And he didn't know him. So that I would say, now that...
No, my definition of chance is stars. You know those things that we were talking about even yesterday with Barack Muluka, stars aligning and all those things. That is chance.
All right. Why don't we give the example...
It finds you right there.
Why don't we give the example of a political scenario? You've heard me mention this in the past. Ford, Kenya. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga passes the way. Do you know who is the deputy? Paul Muite. What does Paul Muite do? Paul Muite leaves. All right? Who then becomes leader? Kijana Wamalwa. Up to that point. Let's pause. Fast forward it. We have an election coming to 2002. Then you have President Kibaki decides he is going to work with Kijana Wamalwa. Then stories abound as to what happened before which. But I'm going by this story. Raila Odinga says Kibaki tosha. Lo and behold, what do you have? Kibaki becomes president. Kijana Wamalwa?
Vice.
Precisely. And at that particular point in time, you couldn't say Ford Kenya was the most prominent party in the country. Now, there are those who've argued that the role of chance is best exemplified by that. Jaramogi passes away. Muite decides to leave the party to form his own party. Kijana Wamalwa is there. There's a role of chance. And I'm saying no.
No. In that particular one, there's no role of chance. In that particular one, these are circumstances where somebody is
And what do you think chance is?
Chance is Daniel Arap Moi wakes up in Kabarnet, goes to teach at a primary school. These Wazungus are coming to interview people to join the Ledge Corps. The people who are expected to come for the interview don't turn
show
up. And then these guys have a deadline and they need to take a name back to Nairobi. And the chief says, there's a teacher in a school down here. Can we talk to him? Daniel Arap Moi is not the only teacher in that school.
Precisely. Can you pause for a second?
Okay. Ngoja.
There's something I want to add. There's a reason why I'm needing to pause. why did this person mention Moi? Moi was already doing something that was outstanding.
He had already been recognized.
Okay, now
by people
Yes.
over
by
time.
people. So carry on with your story.
So I carry on.
Yes.
So they say, go bring him. Chief goes, brings Daniel Arap Moi. Daniel Arap Moi sits there wearing his PE kit, gets interviewed. Next, his name is forwarded and he's the person who goes to LegCo.
Yes.
Chance.
No.
Chance.
I'm saying
Daniel Arap Moi had no desire to join politics. Daniel Arap Moi, at that point, had not applied for this position.
So the chance in this case would be that he was at this school at this time.
No, chance is first of all, these people who are supposed to come for the interview, none of them showed up. Chance number 2, Chief remembers Moi. Chance number 2. Chance number 3, these guys need to take a name to Nairobi. And chance number 4, Moi ends up being the only person in this interview. Chance. Moi had not calculated getting here. That is chance.
You are saying he played no role, and I'm saying he did. I'm saying
there was an opportunity.
Of all the teachers that they were in that school, he was not the only teacher. It wasn't a school with one teacher.
They could have chosen anyone.
Yes, but he stood out. There was something about him that was clearly visible, and why it is he was chosen. All right?
Yes,
now,
yes, that's true.
We're in agreement there?
We're in agreement, yes.
At that point, you could argue he participated. Now, why these individuals, if we knew the story of why these fellows didn't come and the numbers they were, then I might agree with you, but we actually don't. For all you know, it's not as though they lived around the school. For all you know, on that day, someone's cattle got stolen.
Chance.
For all you know, no.
Chance.
This is the point I'm trying to make.
These are stars aligning, boss.
And I'm trying to explain that the stars can even form a choir if they want. But what I'm saying is that there are certain things that if the individual hadn't participated in this argument of chance, the discussion of chance and the participation of chance would have gone out of the window. We wouldn't even be discussing it.
Right, because it was very clear that he participated in this process, which is what hold on. Because he was not the only teacher on the compound at that time.
No.
Yes.
Right. Somebody else would have been chosen. However, his pre-participation in expression of any kind of interest or the gift that somebody
that's what the chief
the
chose
gift that would have seen in him
skills
is what led to him being chosen. They could have chosen anyone, but
he was not directly participating in going to LegCo, and that's why I'm saying the chance is.
Right, but in alignment with what the LegCo was looking for at that time. That is why they said this guy would do it, because they had seen already that he had those qualities.
You see, the person
and
that
they
Moi
didn't see that by
replaced-
him keeping his mouth
The person
shut.
that Moi replaced to be the representative of the Rift Valley, right, is somebody who wanted to be there. If you look at the other people, Kina James Mathu, these are people who had participated in politics.
Eliud
Mathu, yes, had participated in politics, and they wanted to get into politics. Moi had not participated in politics at that grassroots level. He was not.
We don't know if the other individuals who would have been called to this interview had participated, showed any kind of interest.
Now let's
We don't
assume
know
that
those
for
details.
whatever reason,
right?
they were supposed to have come. They
But
didn't come.
this individual being
Moi
Daniel
didn't
Moi,
work towards going to LegCo.
No, he didn't work towards it. But there was something that they had seen in him that he would then stand in as a substitute for those individuals who did not come. And this thing that they saw, they didn't see because he kept his mouth shut. Obviously, there were certain expressions he made. There were certain qualities which he made known. So they said, by the time these guys realized that nobody had shown up, the next possible person for them to realize was him, because of what they had seen in him previously. And he participated in that process by the way in which he expressed
So are you agreeing
his
with what
needs or
CT is
his
saying, that
desires.
there's nothing like role of chance?
No, I didn't say there's no role of chance. I'm saying in this
Instance.
In this particular
he
instance
played
of-
a role. Absolutely.
It wasn't stars aligning or anything of that sort.
He played a
You
role.
don't see anything like, good luck, good day.
Oh, well, okay, no, let's be honest. It was
Sun
a good day
rose
because
from the
he
east
could,
on this day.
he could have been, well, it rises from the east on every day, but
This particular day, it rose from the east.
in this case, obviously, I would say that yes, definitely things were aligned for sure, but he had a role to play in it because things would have been aligned and nobody knew who he was because he was quiet as a church mouse going about his business. If he was
He was
that
a
kind of
self-effacing
person,
fellow.
absolutely.
And
if he was
even
that kind
when,
of person, they
even
would
when
not
he
have
was the
chosen
president,
him.
he was still self-effacing.
Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, right? Moses Mudamba Mudavadi dies. Wycliffe is a young man. Wycliffe gets into politics. Chance or participation?
Participation of by being his father's son.
He followed in the footsteps of his father.
That's the participation, and he wasn't the only one.
He followed in the footsteps of his father.
Come on, you guys. Chance presented itself, and he took opportunity.
This one he didn't take. He was given. Please understand.
Yeah, he was given, but also, he took
now,
it. He took it.
If
very
you talk
well.
about role of chance, and let me further my argument, what was the relationship between Wycliffe Mudavadi's father and Moi? Wycliffe Mudavadi's father had been a teacher and was in the administrative arm of education. So the likelihood of them having been met, I've heard of stories how they met, and when they were both in the education sector, one was a teacher and one was an administrator. Those even argue they're related. But there was an association that the two had that preceded Wycliffe's father going into politics, isn't it? Now, one of the things that is true of most politicians, you want to hang around people you can trust and people you know. So it made sense. This person is my friend, comes from this part of the country, and I need someone I can rely on. And indeed, he chose the person. Now, if he passes away, this isn't chance. This is how people relate. I know you. Not even in the olden days, there was a time, very many organizations in this country, if you had worked with them and retired, they would employ a son. In fact, they would ask you to bring a son or a child whom you wanted employed. It was normal. Is that chance? Or is it a company policy that you're benefiting from by virtue of having worked there? Or is it chance that you worked for that company?
Chance is that it's you who was picked.
Oh, no. It was given, that opportunity I'm talking about for
was
working.
Handed over
it
to
was,
you.
It was not for one
you.
person. Anybody who had worked and had reached retirement, you were told, please bring a son or a daughter, somebody we can employ.
Here's chance. Chance is the person, your father is retiring when you still don't have a job. If your father was retiring and you're already a manager in another company, he can't be told, bring a son.
In those days,
and he tells you, my son is already a manager.
Sorry.
The good thing, Eric, is that people didn't have one son in those days. Or one child. There were many.
So chance is the son.
Yes.
The son that gets picked.
I would argue.
That's a lucky son.
I would argue that you create the chance. This is really my argument. It's not something that happens outside your participation. I'm saying you create it. If you talk to someone who is successful, remember how we have many successful businesses in Kenya, they all seem to start off by selling eggs.
And charcoal.
Yes. So, is it chance? In this case, it's not entirely true, very simply.
No.
So, but is it hard work? Is it taking advantage of the opportunities that present themselves? Or is it chance? What would you say plays a role in their success?
Chance. You're born into that family. We're talking about the ones who succeed.
I'm talking about people who are successful in business.
The ones who are successful in business, there must be chance at some point.
Look at people who were in power.
We were having a conversation, and this person told me, you know what? There's this new beer company, and they're looking for distributors. Can you get a truck? Come, I take you and introduce you. Chance.
Are you the only one who's been told? Usually, no.
Quite a number.
Are you the only? Is that person the only one who knows?
Chance,
the answer is no.
Chance is you are the one who was told, and you took advantage. Now the opportunity presented itself, but you took advantage of that opportunity.
And I'm arguing, why did they choose you? And there were many other people they could have told.
And not them.
Your friend.
Precisely. So where's chance in that? You were already friendly. The person was already predisposed towards you.
That is a chance.
No.
It's something deliberate in this case.
This person does not have only one friend or two.
Let's
say they have 50 friends.
No.
They didn't tell all 50.
First of all, it's impossible to have 50 friends, but anyway, carry on.
And in this case, you're the friend who happens to have a truck.
There you go. Chance. 20 minutes past 9. Let's take a look at weather, and then the conversation continues. The continuous conversation.
Yes.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. The weather with Spice FM.
At 20 degrees in Nairobi this morning, mostly cloudy conditions. Of course, expect rain later on with highs of 24. In Nakuru at 19 degrees, partly cloudy conditions for the rest of the day, and showers as well expected there with highs of 27 degrees. In Nyeri, currently at 20 degrees, we see rain expected later as well. In Eldoret at 17 degrees, 24 the high and the low of 13. In Kisumu at 23 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions conditions, expect rain later with highs of 29 and lows of 19. At 29 degrees, a warm day in Mombasa with highs of 33. Expect rain later on, though, to kind of cool things off with a low of 26. And finally, in Malindi at 29 as well, rain expected later with 32 the high and 27 the low.
How are you?
Breathing life into the 80s. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
When one looks at the brief period that one lady, Theresa May, was the Prime Minister of the UK, there are those who've attributed just an unfortunate concurrence of bad luck. But they don't take into consideration, for instance, the snap election she called. They also don't take into consideration the poor campaigning that her party actually got involved in and how it resulted in them losing a majority that they had. Now, the question that one would ask is, where exactly does luck play a role in her eventual exit? Because she did exit. Is it in her decision-making process? Is it in what she actually did? Where does luck come in?
There's no luck.
There's no luck there.
She participated fully.
Now, I would argue that the incidences that one could argue and say it is luck or bad luck.
Bad luck.
Yes, because if something happens beyond your control and is a series of it, and it happens one after the other,
then you would have said to be having...
You could be said to be having bad luck, yes, but my argument would be you set in motion a sequence of events by something that you did. So now
even if you just did it once.
Yes, but you set it in motion. So
Right.
whatever then happened, you can say it is
As a result
of that. Yes, that is what my position would be. That's what my argument would be. But some would say, no, that is bad luck. And I would say, no, it isn't bad luck. Now, there are also those who say that, and the example that was given of our colleague, Mike Gitonga, okay, and the president stopping and meeting him, you could argue and say, really, what are the chances that on that particular day, at that particular time, he would find himself at that particular spot, and that the president's vehicle would stop there at that particular time, and that he, of all the people, would be identified? What are the chances of that?
Close.
And they would argue and say, now that is what the role of chance is. And I would argue, you do not know why the president had chosen to stand to stop at that. No, you don't. He may have planned to stop that. You don't know.
Yes.
Okay? And because we don't know, then you could say, because we don't know, and we're only looking at the events as they unfolded before our eyes, as we were told, we'd say it is luck. But for all you know, the places that the president stopped in, he had decided to stop.
Yes, let's say he had decided to stop.
Yes.
Now bring in Michael Gitonga.
Michael Gitonga was standing in front. It wasn't as though he picked Michael Gitonga from somewhere at the back. Hey, you who's over there?
He was there. He was not at the front of a queue.
No, it wasn't a queue. People were standing in a crowd.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so he was not the only one who was conspicuous.
Yes, it
Unless
is.
you're telling me Michael was wearing something conspicuous on that.
No,
He was not,
I'm
he
not
didn't
even
tell us
going
that.
by what he is wearing. I'm now going.
So here is Michael. Michael was not going to, he was not aware that the president is going to be passing on this road.
No, he wasn't.
So he wasn't even taking a chance that the president might stop here.
No, he wasn't.
Michael is just, walking. And then the president, let's assume that the president had decided, I'm going to stop at Mbagathi and say hello to the people. Michael is just walking, oblivious of what's happening around him. He sees police, and then motorcade stops, and he's like, hiya, this is Mzee. So he also stops, and he's like, hiya, I'm looking at the Mzee. So he's looking at him, mouth wide open, looking at Mzee, and Mzee notices mouth wide open and decides this guy is hungry. I want to give him something. But you see, this is not something that Michael had planned. So from Michael's perspective, this is
It's
chance.
his chance. It's his good luck. It was a good luck day.
It was a good
wasn't
day.
good luck. That money disappeared just as quickly as
Right,
it
there
went.
you go. As quickly as it came, it disappeared, of course.
What he did with the opportunity, now let's leave it to But the point is, woke up on the good right side.
Why
of the
don't
bed.
I bring this discussion to what is happening in the country right now? We have been seeing off our former president in the best way that we could actually master within the country and using the resources available to us. Now, if you look at this event, it brought together leaders from around this particular continent. It brought in all our political leaders. It brought in the civils. It brought in everybody. Okay? Now, people were asked to speak. And we were talking earlier on in the show and looking at the newspaper review of some individuals who said to talk about themselves.
Right.
Now, that's someone who you could argue wasn't going to lose that opportunity to talk. Now, let us ask the net effect of his statement and probably what he intended it to be. You may find those two things are not in tandem. Why? Because there is an understanding we all have of what a funeral should be. And if it's a funeral of such a senior person, we all have a very clear understanding of what it should be. But the one thing that has stood out despite everything I've said is that the clear successor to the Moi legacy was chosen, and we saw it with clarity. Now, is that something that was planned, or was that chance?
Wow. There's an interesting question to answer.
Planned.
Well, of course, it was clearly planned. It was planned, know, from the words that his older brother spoke at that point. From what we see, we obviously was not just him. So it's a discussion that took place with other people. We see that it is you then who should carry the mantle moving forward. So it's something that was planned. It wasn't by chance. It didn't just happen.
It didn't
to
take
be
anybody
there.
by surprise, really. Even anybody who sat there and, oh my God, I don't believe what I'm seeing. Come on.
How can it be that Gideon will be the one to be chosen?
It was very clear from the very beginning. Gideon is the one who's also been the senator of this county. Gideon is the one who took over as MP of this particular constituency, your
From his
father's constituency. Your other brothers were trying to be MP elsewhere. Yeah, you are the one who your father actually said, oh, no, wewe kuja, take over here. It was very clear that this is what was going to happen. So this is not chance, really. Maybe chance would be from that very moment early on when the father decided, this is the man that I want to groom to take over my legacy. Maybe that's what you'd say. This is a chance.
And even then, when a father points to a particular child, is it really chance? Or is it the eye that parents have? Because parents know their children.
They can see.
Of course, they can
see. They know their children.
They know
very,
their
very
children
well.
And they know the capabilities
this child
that they
can
have.
do this,
Yes.
this one can't do this, this one can do this.
So by the time they're singling somebody out, it's because they've seen the potential that they have to be able to, execute something or carry the day as far as a certain mandate is concerned. They know that this one would be able to, this one would not.
All right.
And I'm sure he put that in the ears of other people constantly.
And when someone takes off the mantle, there are other consequences, causal effects. President Moi is no more. This person has taken the mantle. Do you see a shift in political alignments in the country?
Oh, those will happen for sure. But then the question is that are people going to be...
It's a very heavy... even the conversation that we're having there, Revive Kanu. Kanu is a very big party, Revive Kanu. So initially, obviously, people are looking at you. Yes, you are Gideon, you're Moi's son.
Yes,
but
now...
when you see you, we are seeing everything that you're doing. We are
your father.
But now we see you as a leader.
Now it's you.
Now, if someone like Nick Salat, say, for instance, some arrangement, these handshakes keep going all over the place. Another handshake takes place, all right? And Nick Salat suddenly ends up with some very heavy-duty job, say, in government.
It wouldn't be a surprise.
Chance.
Aha. The man has been Secretary General of this party for the longest time.
He's been unwavering in his support.
Hasn't moved.
Has not moved. It
doesn't matter whether
when
he's
the
doing
floods came
strategy.
and there was all this euphoria, people did
he
not.
He has got
strategies.
He saw it from
Eric,
a long time ago.
You've gotten my thinking. Where is chance here?
This is not chance.
This is strategy.
Yes.
It was
his
planned.
father, it was Isaac Salat, had been also close to the president.
Right.
Yes. But he has shown something exemplary.
In this case, it got so tight, it became something of a brotherly nature that he had with these folks.
You could see.
So in the event that this man will be a leader, he had already been positioned. He wouldn't have to look much further.
So there is no chance.
There's no chance
because he had an opportunity to make a decision.
He could have left with everybody else.
He could have joined some other party. Yes. He had all the opportunities to do so because he himself is a politician of good repute.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, where does the role of chance come into something of this sort?
In this case,
I am saying this again, that you make your own chances.
Exactly.
Not in all cases, though.
You may not even think so,
This is
but
where
you do.
This is where I think we have some disagreement with you this morning. There are instances where, yes, your strategy
Give me
pays
an example.
off. I just started off. The Moi Lejko thing, that story, for me, that's pure chance.
And I am saying
Pure
that I am
chance.
saying, and you're saying, according to you, that the stars on that particular day aligned themselves
Yes.
and found themselves staring at Baringo.
Yes.
For me, if it was pure chance, it would have been an individual who was walking along and they looked out the window and they said, we need somebody, we can't find somebody else, come in here. But by virtue of the fact that this guy played in their minds because of what they'd heard or seen before, it was something that was
You know,
clearly-
you're at a point where you're having a conversation and someone asks you, who do you think would be a good person to lead? Right? And then you're looking, okay, so, and you've told us this many times before. Teachers, in that point in time, teachers were very, very important people in society.
were.
So you think the first thing that the chief thinks of is, I can't think of another chief. So next in line, teachers.
And the first teacher
Which
that came to
teacher
his
do I
mind?
know? Daniel.
Because
he had stood out.
He had stood out as a good teacher.
Yeah, he was not the only
As
teacher
a
in
good
the school.
teacher. Not as a good politician. Not as
At
a
that
good,
point, he was just a teacher.
Yes,
Exactly.
not
so he
as
had
a good representative of the people.
Yeah, so he had
So the
exemplified some
chance here
features or
is-
qualities that they would be interested in.
True.
Right.
But the chance here is that he gets now picked into this new life.
I get the chance being that he maybe was not, he could have been sick that day.
Yeah,
He
or
could,
imagine
right?
also
Okay.
that, yes.
Maybe he didn't come to school that day.
Could have gone
That would
for a
have been-
meeting, not in Cabernet, but now he's been called to a meeting in Eldoret. So he's not there. So the chief goes to school. Wapi Daniel, yuko leo.
You know, an example is given of somebody who, say, for instance, the example, a cardiac arrest usually gives a good example because you feel if you get a cardiac arrest, chances of dying are really, truly high. And at that particular instance, it so happened that there was a fire and there were ambulances that were actually traveling along that path. And so because of that, what you call coincidence, you are then taken to hospital and you survive the heart attack. So you could say you're a lucky man. Now, the argument...
You have done well. You've brought in that word. Coincidence. Thank you.
Of course. I have to give you a tax break. So I am saying this. If you're talking about stars aligning themselves, let's start with the heart attack. All right? The fact that you're talking about it, it means you're alive. That's number one.
Yeah.
And the fact that it happened, it means chances, again, the word chance. You had been unwell, but you hadn't actually figured that is the day you would get a heart attack. People don't sort of like anticipate, today I think I'm going to get a heart attack. No.
Today.
Okay? But it happens that there was a fire. Now, when you're talking about the role of chance or the role of providence, now this is where people look at and see the hand of God. And now remove the element of chance from the discussion and say providence. It is God ordained. Now, at this point, I would like to distinguish between the role of what we call chance and where providence, God's hands, comes in. Because for me, it is far more plausible for that as an explanation than to throw it and make it. Remember I said, I don't believe in chance. No, I actually don't.
26 minutes to 10 o'clock. Let's first take a look at the traffic and see what chance do you have with traffic this morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Well, on Langata Road, you have no chance of getting to town in the next 10 minutes because we still have traffic as far back as KWS snaking its way along, then down towards the T-Mall. Better chances, of course, on Thika Road and Mombasa Road, where traffic has seemed to open up quite some. And it's the stuff that dreams are made of in this case, because then we're not stuck anymore. Jogo Road, where we had some traffic before, that has opened up as well, getting into the city centre, coming from industrial area or then coming towards the city stadium roundabout. So it's looking good now, folks. Better than the heart attack situations that we had seen previously. Unless something else happens, you should be fine for now. Don't forget you can reach us on Spice FMKE on Twitter or give us a call, let us know what you see. But for now, everything should be A-OK.
Breathing life into the 90s. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
So
FM,
Malindi
Nairobi.
City Muga does not believe in chance. And he says...
Luck, chance.
In chance, luck, nothing. Role of chance, nothing. You play a part in everything that you become.
Yes.
Now, do you agree with him or do you not? 0719-012-600. You can call in and join that conversation. Also, you can post your comment on Facebook, Spice FM KE. Of course, we are juxtaposing this with what is happening politically in our country, in our leadership. What is it that we do? Is it that we have bad luck? Do we end up with bad leaders because of bad luck, of our bad luck? Are we where we are because of our good luck? Because, by happenstance, this happened.
Or is there another word that CT is going to use this morning that perhaps other people would liken to chance? That would liken to chance? Because I think that there are many times whereby somebody would have said, if I hadn't been at this particular meeting and, for example, didn't take a break to go to the washroom, for example, I would not have met this man in the corridor who would have told me that he was looking for a particular thing, and I just happened to be the one who could fill that spot.
Yep.
We've had,
you've asked the question,
and you can't say that you played a part because you got out of bed
you've
that
asked
morning.
the question,
No.
and I will answer it. What I would accept, if you told me it was God's plan, I would actually accept it more readily.
It was God's plan for me to have taken.
So that's fine.
If you describe all that and say God's plan, my mind would resonate easier
That you'll
with it.
take.
Chance, I'll tell you no. Because for every example you give me of chance, I'll be able to provide you with evidence that you had as much a role to play in it as the next person.
Okay, like in this
But
case
even in
now,
God's
somebody
plan,
stated,
God put you in this position.
He does.
Same
does.
thing. You give us an example of, the sons of that man, and he asked, don't you have another son?
The gentleman was called Jesse, and his son was called David. And this guy, I think, how many sons? 12.
Yes, he had 12.
I said, don't you have another one?
He asked.
And,
like a
he
young
didn't ask the
boy
question
is-
once. He asked it a couple of times. Is there no one else?
David was even considered a non-entity. So he was the last person in his father's mind. That was a problem. The father actually wasn't considering him. So when the guy asked, look, surely, the guy who told me to come here is telling me none of these guys qualified. So, and it must be one of your sons. They said,
There's another one, but he's in the field tending sheep.
That guy is,
That
he's,
boy, where is he?
where is he? Yeah, exactly. So I am saying that if you look at chance and you look at, say, for instance, from the time you're born and the things that happen to you, and you want to explain chance, I feel that chance becomes a very flimsy reason and a very flimsy way of explaining it. I would use the word providence. I would say this one, it goes beyond my own capabilities, and it isn't just chance. Because chance is
What's
like
the difference
saying...
between those two, by the way?
The difference is that one is planned for, and one is actually ordained, and the other one is just things colliding willy-nilly without any plan.
All right. For example, I wasn't supposed to come to Kenya, right? I was supposed to go to a school in Egypt. Right, I was ready for that. All my stuff was in place. At the same time, my older sister and brother had come to Kenya, and they said, they started going to school here. And then my folks said, okay, well, we're still waiting for your documents to come from Cairo. Why don't you just take Kenya? If you don't, after 3 months or so, you don't like it, you can proceed to Egypt. So okay, fine. Didn't like it, but came here, and then. The day I arrived here and finished orientation at school, my papers arrived in Nigeria for Egypt. Was that chance?
You had a choice.
Or was it planned? Was it something that was planned? Because it wasn't in the cards at all. It was not an option.
I'm not getting what are you asking? So here you made a decision to come to Kenya to go and try out a university. You had also made a decision to try out Egypt. And then at this particular point, you're presented with a choice.
The
papers are here, the papers are here.
The only decision was to go to Egypt. My parents stepped in and said, since your older brother or sister are there and we don't have these papers yet, try this option. I applied and I got it. Now, it was not chance in this case because it was orchestrated. Another one would have said in this
chance would be if we were saying that, if you had gone to Egypt, you'd be Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's wife. You'd be the first lady of Egypt today. But now here you are, sitting with us here in the studio.
In the situation.
You see what you did?
I am simply saying
that things are supposed to be a certain things are supposed
I am
to
arguing
be
that
a certain way.
that most things in your life are actually preordained.
All right,
It's actually who doesn't understand it, and so you'll call it chance.
Right.
And
so
you'll
in
say
this case, if you want to move the conversation now and go back to politics now, for example. So we're saying that if a leader was supposed to be in a position, so whether people voted a certain way or not, that is what was predestined for this person to be, whether it was a bad choice.
No, people would have voted
voted this way for him or her to get into this position regardless.
Que sera.
No? CT. Preordained by God. This is what we are saying. So
now when you say preordained, now I'm with you.
You see?
And to me, but when I was talking about chance, this is the same thing. To me, it's the same. It's chance, but it's preordained.
You know why?
Not everything that you wake up knowing that this is how my day is going to end.
Yes.
You don't plan for the day, but then it ends in that way.
Look at if you look at your own life and the things that you've probably explained as coincidence, how numerous they are, how they've collided and moved, and how they keep colliding and moving and taking in a certain direction. They are numerous. We're talking about this one thing. Michael Gitonga's example. We don't know what Michael Gitonga was doing the whole day. If you were to say, Michael, what were you doing the day before?
3 minutes later, he could have been somewhere else.
That's the point I'm making.
3 minutes earlier.
So tell me how you're going to fit chance into this thing that happened at that moment in time, which, if it wasn't for the president being there, it would just have been an event. He would just have been passing by there. The reason why it becomes something monumental is because the president happened to be there on that particular day. And I'm saying, it didn't happen. It's a route he followed. Sorry.
It's somewhere that he was.
It's a route he followed. Yes.
So bring it back now to our politics and our country.
Yes.
So where we are now, it's preordained.
I am saying it is.
It's like looking back in the Bible and saying these are the 70 years in the Babylon.
I am saying this. I am saying this. That you can actually talk about the role of chance in the leadership. Remember how I began, the sort of leaders we have, and I would say bunk. Because we have the people we have because we vote for them. And why do we vote for them? We vote for them because we may say one thing, but what we believe is determined or is exemplified by what we do. Kenyans like electing leaders who are thieves. We actually don't mind them. We mind them when the activities now seem to be bringing our country to the brink of collapse.
Because if Kenyans did mind them, then they would vote.
They wouldn't be there.
They would vote in
they would
a
not
different
be there.
way. Or
they would not be there.
There'd be a chance. There's a chance of us getting a good leader.
There is always a very good chance of us getting a good leader.
We have chance.
A good leader. Yes, the opportunity exists, but it's whether we are going to make that decision to actually decide and say, look,
it could happen. Which is where chance will
I'm
come
actually
in.
taking it elsewhere. It will happen. There is no leader that we have that is actually a bad leader. Every leader we have is appropriate. Every.
Appropriate for the circumstances.
Appropriate for the circumstances. Appropriate. One may not think so, but this is, again, remember, this is my view here.
Yes.
It's appropriate. Yes. The current presidency that we have is appropriate for the times because they've afforded us an opportunity for reflection that hasn't happened in a very, very long time. As to who this debate is taking place because the leadership. Under this government, we've seen pilferage on a scale that the mind has not even been allowed to go to. Every time you think something bad has happened, something worse happened, that you're wondering, then you get to a point and say, yes, no. Here, these fellows, this thing isn't going to stop. So then you have to pause and ask, how did we get here? We've asked the question, when did this rain start beating us? Because it's one after another, after another, after another, after another.
So at the end of the day, we're the ones who are making the decisions. We are the ones who are making the decisions.
There is a point at which we make that decision ourselves. And that decision, we are being told, the consequence of your decision, here we are.
Chance.
Here we are.
The occurrence of events in the absence of any obvious intention or cause. Chance. Accidental. Fortuitous.
See?
Chance.
And that's what I'm saying. Not true.
In most of these cases, there is an external force that
you can even explain it. All these things that we keep talking about as bad luck, ill fortune, you can explain it. You've been playing around the whole year and you are in a class that's supposed to do an exam.
And then the night before you want to read.
And then you want to read, and then you start claiming that, the things I read did not come. So you read it for an hour and then fell asleep. What do you think was going to happen?
Not bad luck.
No.
That failure can be explained.
Hey, wait, okay.
There are things that cannot be explained.
Like?
It's 10:15.
The 80s have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Right. 94.4 Spice
As we
FM,
continue this
Nairobi.
conversation, let's bring you up to speed with something that's happening. So, see what this BBI committee was supposed to be doing from the very beginning. They are doing it today. And this is, they have called for a 2-day meeting, the BBI steering task force. Now, what are they now? Task force steering.
Let's say BBI. Let's just say BBI and continue.
No. You may confuse it with the BBI, Tanga BBI politicians. This is the BBI Mzee Haji. Right?
All right, BBI Mzee Haji.
Yes, that BBI Mzee Haji is now holding meetings at the Laiko Regency in Nairobi. This morning, today, they are listening to the leadership, the women leaders. Tomorrow, they'll be listening to political leaders. Come and present your report, your thinking. This is the validation of the BBI report. This is what we have presented in the report. Is this what you told us? It's a validation process. So this whole kelele that has been happening, basically, it has been condensed nicely. It's been conducted very soberly in a town hall meeting at Laiko. And then from here, I'm expecting that it'll go around the country. Now, the question is
this planned or is it chance? Were they forced into this situation by the noise that they've heard coming from all over the country?
Or was it something that they had planned
all along?
They knew they were going to do this. All this noise that everybody was making was neither here nor there, because they knew at some point we're going to still sit down and hear what it is that you have to say.
And if we look at the argument that was put forth by the Honorable Martha Karua, and said this representation is not a genuine representation. It bespeaks more of appointments that favor the people who appointed them. Now, if indeed somewhere along the line you suddenly hear there's a further inclusion or people from known bodies, whether it is this or the other, will that be chance or will that be circumstances that have been brought about because of agitation? If you genuinely look
So what we can say
Yes.
is that the members of this committee ended up there by chance.
These fellows here,
This particular task
the ones who were there,
Yes.
no, there was no
the
chance.
14 members.
There was no chance.
Ended
there.
up there by chance.
Nope, they didn't.
Did they campaign to get that position?
They didn't.
There you go. Chance.
Why don't we look
You are
at
Bishop
each
Lawi
member?
Imatthew, you are there, you are doing whatever you're doing now in retirement, and then of course you get a call from your friends who are in government and they tell you, you know what, Mzee, we're looking to create a task force.
It doesn't. Yes.
For the building bridges.
Someone like that don't call
And
you.
we
They,
want you
they
to-
actually send someone to talk to you.
Yes.
to you.
Yeah. So here you are. This is what we want to do. We want you to join this task force. By chance.
Mzee Haji, was he not in the Senate?
He was.
Precisely.
Na name was wako. In the
Yes.
Senate. Just
Yes.
like all the other 90 senators.
Yeah, precisely. Why do you think they were chosen? Because they were chosen. Amos Wako is perhaps our longest serving AG. Okay? And by all accounts, a brilliant man. A man who actually understands the law. Now you tell me, Haji, one of the longest serving provincial commissioners in this country, ends up as as a senator. Okay? You have Adam Zolo, okay? A political scientist. Look at each of these fellows. What you will find is that without fail, each of these individuals is aligned to some political being within the handshake. So there's nothing coincidental about their choices. It's not coincidence. There is an agenda that needed to be met by the BBI, and you needed people who could carry it.
Right, and then if you want to look at the whole panel or this whole committee of individuals, it's not just, again, not any kind of random picking of, okay, who do you know? No. I mean, you want to assume that it was people who were selected for their skills that they have in a particular area to be able to deduce or to be able to make decisions, about what the country needs, whether it's been constitutional review and how they've been involved in the past, whether it is dockets that they've sat at, whether legally, in the justice system, wherever. So then putting them all together, it doesn't mean that they were in one place at one time and somebody says, hey, what are you doing nowadays? You don't have anything to do. Okay, come join this committee. No. It was obviously something that they had been. So by the time they popped into somebody's mind, it's because of gains that they had made in whatever, position that they were in previously.
As I said, the BBI had an agenda. And if you have an agenda, you need a vehicle that can transport whatever it is you wanted to its destination. Now, those who decided on the BBI and those who decided on what they wanted to achieve needed these people. So these people were chosen with that in mind. Because for every person chosen, you could say, but they could have.
Yeah.
But they didn't. That's the point.
Yes.
So
by chance, these guys were chosen.
By design. By design. These people were chosen.
The appointing authority by design picked so and so.
By design.
And the appointing authority picked these individuals also. They were chosen by design.
As the appointee,
there is something they had
by chance.
Or there's certain things that they have done in the past that warranted their selection.
But they're not the only ones.
No.
What we are saying today is basically, if you look at this 14 people,
then you would have 1 million people on the committee.
Exactly.
But they said we have certain slots, and in these slots, we have seen certain individuals have the capacity to do this job right.
If you look at these 14 people plus the 2 joint secretaries, which of them is the obvious choice? That when you had mzee nani wameshake hands, all right, they're going to form a task force. All right, I can tell you that task force is going to have so and so because he's a former PC, long-serving PC. It's going to have Adams because he's a political scientist. It's going to have no.
Some thought went into this. Why don't we look at, say, Obama, the former president, Barack Obama, the former president of the U.S. This was a man doing his social service, activism, whatever it is he was doing. Did he not attempt at a political position and fail first? He did.
Yes.
But there are people who saw him and said, hey, this guy, I think this guy has potential.
He has put himself out there.
Yes. So circumstances arose. There seemed to have been a gap in this senatorial posts. And they told, no. This time, instead of standing here, forget this. We want you to attempt here. All right? That was it. He ended up being senator. From senator, he decided, something? So we can take a dash at this presidency now. No, it doesn't work like this. Usually you need to work a bit, become governor.
Grow some gray hair.
Yes, go, hey, come on. Didn't.
He said, no, I'm going for the top.
Didn't. But I'm sure he had advisors who also told him,
Who told him, go to Senate and go to.
I think this one we can do. This one, let's take a stab at it. And see how it goes. Because there's everything new about you, and given where we are at this particular moment in time. Now, where exactly is the role of chance here?
Where we are at this particular moment in time.
Yes.
There we go.
Now, that isn't chance. That is what you call opportunity.
Yes. Circumstance.
Yes. It conspired, as those who would argue, to give him the opportunity.
And of course, if you want to, then because other things come into play, because then the political temperature in the United States was ready for a dramatic change in terms of how things were done and how the country was governed. And that dramatic change then presented itself in the opportunity that was Barack Obama. So, at this point, it would be said that there was no choice here.
There was a choice.
In terms of there was no choice in terms of making a change. They knew something needed to change.
Yes,
regardless.
But remember, this was
change.
This one, call it the wind of change. But this was really drastic. Huh?
It was. The sooner they would have seen pigs
not
fly than
just
a black
a
man
Native American. This is a
black man
whose heritage
of African descent.
Kamsa, whose relatives are known, whose home is known, the whole works. Drastic. If someone wanted to talk about the role of chance in this one, you could say, you could actually argue and say it played an important role, but I would argue and say no. What you're calling chance is what I'm calling providence. Because if you look at the circumstances, forget even the first term, and then you go to the second term, all right? To understand this, you need to look at now the term when President Trump came into power. Some of the very core people who voted for Obama then ended up voting for Trump. Yes. So, where is chance here? I would argue there's this individual called Obama, Forget even the party. This person here. There's something about this person that appealed to these people. And they felt, you know something? Yeah, we know all these things, these details, and we know traditional this. But this guy, let's give this guy a chance. So, look at his background. Look at his father. Look at his life. What had happened to him up until then. You could argue that it all built up to make him the person he was, so that he was actually able to do what...
And he was primed then for this position.
Exactly. So, where's the role of chance here?
This particular one, there's no role of chance.
There's no chance here.
It just happened. This one, it didn't just happen, actually.
No, it didn't.
He worked at it.
He did.
Yeah,
and there's clear evidence he did.
Yeah, he had worked at it. He had, put himself out in those positions.
He had.
From early on.
And given the work he did with the communities, this is a man who actually had put himself in a position where he could understand how what we call the Mwananchi thinks. He knew. Not from what he was being told, he had been in touch.
Right.
And he had options, given where he had studied and what he did. That man had other options of going to Wall Street, going all other places where one could have gone to make money with his qualifications and with the push he had. But he chose to do public service.
Right.
Okay, where we all know there's no money. In
Where,
Kenya, yes. In Kenya,
clarify which country we're talking about.
In Kenya, Nigeria, that's where there's money.
No, there's money there. I beg. Public service. Everybody clamors to go there so that you can make money.
So
are we where we are because of providence?
We are where we are because of providence. Why I say providence is because if you look at the leaders we have had and the sequence of events and the turn of events and the likelihood of turmoil that could have happened to us at every stage in comparison to our neighbors in other countries where a little spark brought about a huge avalanche of fire. Some of this thing goes beyond what you can say.
Ni mambo ya Mungu.
Yeah, you can't say it's a human effort, sorry.
Ni mambo ya Mungu.
Yes. There are things which, it doesn't matter how you look at.
This growing up in the coast, by the way, living in the coast for very many years, it really impacted on you.
I grew up in Nakuru.
Yeah, but
before I went to Mombasa.
Before you spent
I went. The years that I was growing up when I was young and impressionable was spent in the Rift Valley.
In Rift Valley.
Yes.
So then, after you were not
in
impressionable.
your adult life, when you went now to the coast, this thing of saying, come on,
no, that's fatalism.
No,
that's fatalism. That's fatalism, meaning everything that happens, I have no choice in.
It's my fate.
Yes,
it was going to happen anyway.
Remember, my argument wasn't that.
And
no,
that's what I'm asking you.
I said
the
decisions you make. Remember my argument. The point at which that individual decision may cease is that there are things that are actually beyond. But I'm saying you are the catalyst, because had you not been who you are at that point, because of the decisions you've made, that opportunity would have come and gone, and you wouldn't even have noticed it.
Like now, you with this voice of yours, if you had decided to do something else.
So is it by chance or by...
You had something to do with it. You made a decision about where you were going to go with it.
Look at people who began their career as you did.
By the time I was making a decision that I wanted to be in media, I hadn't broken my voice. I hadn't. So I was in primary school and I wanted to... When I grow up, I want to be in the media. I want to be a broadcaster. I used to speak like this.
We all spoke like this.
Yeah, was that chance? So was it just by chance that I ended up here?
The decision you made and followed up on is what actually made sure, put paid to what it is that you eventually became.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room this morning. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every morning. Remember, tomorrow we'll be back 6 to 7. We'll, of course, be multicasting this show on KTN News. The Morning Express, one of them, either Trixie Ngado or Michael Getonga, will be joining us so we can take a look at what's been covered in the headlines. And then we'll have our conversation again between now and 3 p.m. Have uninterrupted music, the likes of Justin Bieber and the rest, featuring Skrillex. And then from 3 to 7, you'll be with Monique as she takes you home on Spice Drive. Then join the adults in the room from 7 to 10. That's Eric, Emmanuel, and Barbara. Today is World Radio Day. We'll leave you saying thank you very much for tuning in. Have a happy World Radio Day. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock.